Chapter 703. As long as he killed all the ferocious beasts in the primordial world, the Western sect's plan to enlighten the ferocious beasts would collapse. This was to solve the problem from the root and cut off all possibilities. Good idea. With a thought, these powerful beings also began to move. Unlike humans, they were powerful and disdained to attack those weak connate ferocious beasts. Therefore their targets were very clear. They were the connate ferocious beasts whose realms were above Daluo Jingxian. Speaking of which, Xiantian ominous beasts could be considered walking Xiantian spirit treasures when they reached the level of Daluo Jingxian. If he could refine the corpse and get rid of the fiendish qi in it, he would be able to obtain a powerful connate spiritual treasure. However, it was not difficult for a great medium to kill an innate ferocious beast, but it was difficult to get rid of the innate ferocious qi in its body. Even though they were called walking primordial spirit treasures, the primordial ferocious beasts could still live well in the untainted land. Wasn't it because the great mediums couldn't get rid of the primordial evil qi in their bodies? Did they really think that the great practitioners were easy to get along with? If they had a way to get rid of the innate evil aura in the innate ferocious beasts, the greedy almighty masters would have long exterminated them in order to refine innate spirit treasures. How could they have kept them alive until now? However, being unable to get rid of the innate evil qi was a thing of the past. Now these great beings had found a solution. Isn't the Western sect able to enlighten connate ferocious beasts? Since they could enlighten the primordial ferocious beasts, the two saints, Jian and Juanti, must have the magic power to dispel the primordial ferocious beasts. Otherwise, they could not enlighten the primordial ferocious beasts. Knowing this, the next step was much simpler. It was definitely impossible to directly ask the two saints, Juanti and Juanti. The two of them would not tell them. Therefore, they needed to use some special methods at this time. For example, he could capture a few enlightened Xiantian ferocious beasts. No matter what kind of divine ability it was, as long as it had been used, there would definitely be traces left behind. Since the connate beasts had been enlightened by the two saints of the West, there must be traces of such an art in their bodies. These great masters might not be able to create an enlightenment divine art out of thin air, but it was still possible for them to deduce it based on the traces left behind. At the very least, there was still the three pure ones. After the great mediums had made up their minds, the pre-celestial ferocious beasts in the untainted land were doomed. In just a few thousand years, the ferocious beasts that could be seen everywhere in the past were almost extinct in the untainted world. This was especially true for Daluo Jingxian, as well as the Xiantian ferocious beasts above him. Apart from the ultimate and the nether realm, none of the other places were spared. No matter how deeply they hid, even if they hid in the deep sea abyss or the swamp of death, they would still be found and killed by the great masters. The corpses of these connate realm ferocious beasts were superb materials for refining connate spirit treasures, so who wouldn't be moved? After all, no one would feel that there were too many connate spiritual treasures. Damn it! On Mount Meru, when Juanti and Juanti saw this scene, they were really furious and their eyes were about to pop out. Those connate ferocious beasts were the hope of the Western sect's rise. How could they not feel heartache when they were brutally killed? Not angry, but unfortunately, it was useless no matter how pained or angry they were, because they could not take half a step out of Mount Meru. They could only watch helplessly as the tragedy unfolded. Junior brother, don't be too angry. The connate realm ferocious beasts are formed from the resentment of the Chaos Fiend God. As long as the resentment of the Chaos Fiend God doesn't disappear, the connate realm ferocious beasts will never be extinct. So even if they kill all the connate realm ferocious beasts now, so what? After a while, new connate realm ferocious beasts will be born. It won't ruin our plan. After a while, Saint Jiayin suddenly calmed down and said to Saint Juanti, who was beside him with an angry expression, "Senior brother, I understand. I'm just angry at their attitude. They know that the survival of the connate realm ferocious beasts is related to whether the Western sect can prosper, but they still attacked without any scruples. They obviously don't take the two of us seriously. This is really outrageous." At this moment, Saint Juanti said angrily. He felt that his dignity as a saint had been offended. Under such circumstances, if the two of them were the three pure ones, Would those great masters dare to attack? They were clearly bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Why should the two of them be inferior to the three pure ones even though they were both saints? Xuanti was not convinced. Just wait. In the future, you will have to pay the price for what happened today. Looking at the people who were dividing the fruits of victory, Saint Xuanti thought to himself. The seed of hatred had been planted in his heart, waiting to take root and germinate. The last time, the person who Saint Xuanti was so concerned about was called Di Jun. In the end, 9 of his 10 sons died, and it became the fuse for the destruction of the heavenly court. In less than 10,000 years, the Khanate realm ferocious beasts were slaughtered, and the entire primordial world was cleared. The matter of killing the Khanate realm ferocious beasts had also come to an end for the time being. As for the birth of new Khanate realm ferocious beasts in the future, the great masters had long had a way to deal with them. The new Khanate realm ferocious beasts were definitely not very strong. If they wanted to get rid of them, there was no need for the great masters to do it themselves. They could just leave it to the disciples of the sect to clean up. It could also serve as a form of training. Just like that, the primordial world fell into peace again, and the myriad races continued to enter the stage of cultivation. Time always passed inadvertently. In the blink of an eye, more than 100,000 years had passed. The time limit of the seal that the heavenly Tao had set on everyone had long passed. Feng Zichen and the others had regained their freedom. However, they did not show up. Instead, they all fell into bitter cultivation, hoping to make further progress and break through to a higher realm. In the past 100,000 years, the postnatal Tao had completely replaced the Khanate Tao. In the vast primordial world, there were almost no cultivators who cultivated the Khanate Tao. The Khanate Tao was really too difficult. More than 100,000 years had passed. In the future, there were countless cultivators who cultivated the Tao of Heaven to Daoyuo Jingxian. Only Shao Kong and Shang Tang could cultivate the Khanate Tao to Daoyuo Jingxian. The Khanate Tao was so difficult to cultivate. It was no wonder that all living beings had switched to cultivating the postnatal Tao. No one was willing to waste their lives. Shao Kong relied on the merit of building the great Xia dynasty, and sat in the position of the human king for a full 10,000 years. With this, he accumulated enough foundation and successfully attained the Daoyuo Tao fruit 100,000 years ago, achieving the immortal and indestructible Taoist priest's realm. After him, although the great Xia dynasty was not without successors, their talents withered. Not only did they not produce any decent experts, but they also lost their country tens of thousands of years ago. At the end of the Xia dynasty, the king Xia Jia was licentious and tyrannical, causing the people to have no way of living. At that time, Shang Tang rose up and led an army to overthrow the rule of the Xia dynasty and establish the great Shang dynasty. It was the heavenly bird descended and gave birth to the Shang dynasty. The founder of the Shang dynasty, Wu Tang, relied on the merit of establishing the dynasty and stayed in the position of the human emperor for 10,000 years. With this, he polished a supreme Tao foundation and successfully attained the Daoyuo Tao fruit, becoming the Khanate Taoist priests. The Shang dynasty could be said to be the most powerful dynasty of the human race. It was during the reign of the Shang dynasty that the luck of the human race reached its peak. The monarch of the Shang dynasty was not a king, but an emperor. Every monarch of the Shang dynasty would have the word emperor in front of their name. The emperor of the celestial emperor. Therefore, Shang Tang was also known as Emperor Tang. The Jade Emperor was the ruler of the sky, and the Shang Emperor was the ruler of the earth. The two emperors stood side by side, which was a sign that the luck of the human race had reached its peak. Even the saints did not dare to casually attack the Shang Emperor. That was because the karma involved was simply too great. Even someone as powerful as a saint would not be able to easily withstand it. A Khanate spirit treasure has appeared, and it has something to do with me. One day, Feng Zichen, who was comprehending the Tao, suddenly felt a whim and woke up. After carefully deducing, he realized that a Khanate spirit treasure that was fated with him was born. Interesting. Today, there is actually a Khanate spirit treasure that is fated with me in the primordial world. How surprising. Shaking his head, Feng Zichen stood up and left the boundless starry sky. Following the feeling in his heart, He rushed towards the location of the Khanate spirit treasure. Not to mention Khanate spirit treasures, Feng Zichen did not lack Khanate spirit treasures. The reason why he rushed over was that he was too curious about what kind of Khanate spirit treasure could be related to him. One had to know that ever since he attained the Tao, the Khanate spirit treasures that he had obtained were all snatched from others. As for the situation where he could pick up a Khanate spirit treasure when he went out to travel like before, it had been a long time since it happened. Now that such a situation had suddenly occurred, Feng Zichen also missed it very much. Of course he had to go and take a look. As for whether this was a conspiracy of some people, it was not that Feng Zichen was boasting, but now, there were no more than 5 people in the primordial world who could defeat him. And there was not a single one who had the ability to kill him. Tao ancestor Hongjun could not, and neither could the Way of Heaven. The huge Dharma Laksana of Pangu standing in the untainted world was Feng Zichen's greatest protection in the untainted world. Feng Zichen was not very clear about the strength of the Pangu Laksana formed by the power of the untainted world. However, the Pangu Laksana condensed by the power of the starry sky had the power comparable to the 9th heaven of Hunyuan, not to mention the Laksana of Pangu. At the very least, it had to have the power comparable to that of Wuji Daoyuo Jingxian to be in line with his identity. In fact, he might even become stronger. In short, the power of the Pangu Laksana could be exaggerated as much as possible. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that. With such a trump card, Feng Zichen was naturally not afraid of any danger in the untainted world. If someone really schemed against him, it was not certain who would suffer losses at that time. In the untainted world by the Luo River, Feng Zichen came here and stopped. The Khanate spirit treasure that was fated with him was in the Luo River. Moreover, it would not be long before it was born. The Luo River. Standing by the Luo River, Feng Zichen's face showed a long-lost look of nostalgia. He was very familiar with the Luo River. Not to mention that the heavenly Emperor Fuxi had attained his Tao here and created the Khanate 8 trigrams. Even when Feng Zichen was young, he often played by the Luo River. Back then, Ao Shui was fished out by the human race with the merit golden net here. TSK, I really miss the days back then. Just as Feng Zichen was reminiscing about the past, the Khanate spirit treasure of the Luo River was born. Splash. Amidst the sound of water splashing, a black turtle carrying a mysterious scroll slowly surfaced from the center of the Luo River. In an instant, a resplendent Khanate divine light bloomed, enveloping the mountains and rivers within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. After that, the sound of the great Tao resounded, reverberating between heaven and earth. Such a shocking phenomenon could be said to have alarmed half of the primordial world. Naturally, it attracted countless gazes. Generally speaking, the appearance of a phenomenon meant that a Khanate spirit treasure was born. Moreover, the larger the scale of the phenomenon, the higher the level of the Khanate spirit treasure that was born. The appearance of this phenomenon had alarmed half of the primordial world. That meant that the Khanate spirit treasure that was about to be born was at least a high-grade one. It was also because the current primordial world was not as good as before. Otherwise, if a phenomenon like today had alarmed half of the primordial world, the worst Khanate spirit treasure that was born would be a supreme grade one. However, even so, it did not stop everyone from rushing towards the source of the phenomenon. A high-grade Khanate spirit treasure was not bad. If it was a cultivator, it would be in existence at the level of a mighty figure. Even a great divine ability expert would be tempted. A high-grade Khanate spirit treasure? Not bad, not bad. Without seeing Feng Zichen do anything, the newly born Khanate spirit treasure automatically fell into his hands. At the same time, the origin of this treasure naturally appeared in his mind. The 9 Palaces 8 Trigrams diagram was the name of this Khanate spirit treasure. It was a high-grade Khanate spirit treasure that contained 32 Khanate divine restrictions. The 9 Palaces 8 Trigrams diagram? Looking at the black tortoise that carried out the 9 Palaces 8 Trigrams diagram, Feng Zichen seemed to know the origin of this treasure. If he remembered correctly, this black tortoise should be the one that presented the book to Fuxi back then. Back then, Fuxi had created the Khanate 8 Trigrams diagram here. Because of this, This place was inevitably contaminated with some of the Tao runes of the Khanate 8 trigrams diagram. The He 2 and the Luo Shu had also appeared here, and left behind the Tao runes of the Khanate 9 palaces Tao. For some reason, these two Tao runes of the Great Tao had fused together and become a Khanate spirit treasure under the nurturing of the origin of the Luo water. The boundless world was really full of strange things. This item was indeed fated with Feng Zichen. Among the 10 great spirit treasures that formed the Chaos Array, the Khanate 9 palaces diagram still had a flaw. Fusing the Khanate 9 palaces 8 trigrams diagram could make up for this flaw. It saved me a lot of trouble. Shaking his head and smiling, Feng Zichen put away the Khanate 9 palaces 8 trigrams diagram. However, he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he looked at the black tortoise. This black tortoise was very extraordinary. P.S. I could have posted an anti-theft stamp to cover up the fact that I updated late. But I feel that this will affect the reading experience of the genuine readers. Therefore, I would rather take leave than post an anti-theft stamp. Seeing that I am so considerate of you, give me some monthly votes. Also, I beg for a subscription. 2,915, 85 more. Chapter 704. At the very least, it had a great relationship with the human race. First it was the Book of Luo, and then it was the Khanate 9 palaces 8 trigrams diagram. 2 Khanate spirit treasures in a row were sent over by this black tortoise. From this, it could be seen that this black tortoise must have something special. Otherwise, how could these 2 opportunities fall on its head? With a slight thought, Feng Zichen silently used the Great Yen calculation and began to deduce the origin of this black tortoise. As the divine ability was activated, the karma between heaven and earth gradually became clear in front of Feng Zichen's eyes. 4 pillars that supported heaven and earth came into his sight. Those were the pillars of heaven. They stood between heaven and earth and supported the heavens. After that, the pillars of heaven disappeared and were replaced by endless resentment. So it's this. After coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen said in surprise. He had calculated the origin of the black tortoise. It was indeed shockingly big. In the past, Mount Buzhou collapsed. In order to find a replacement, the Grand Master of Heaven killed a peerless black tortoise in the North Sea, and took its 4 limbs to turn into pillars of heaven to support heaven and earth. Since the creation of heaven and earth, the black tortoise had been living in the North Sea. It never caused trouble, nor did it incur hatred with others. It could be said that it was very honest. Originally, it could live to the end of heaven and earth like this. However, it did not expect that a sudden calamity would take its life. It was really a case of sitting at home and disaster came from the sky. The collapse of Mount Buzhou had nothing to do with the black tortoise. However, at the last moment, the saint actually wanted to use its 4 limbs to replace Mount Buzhou and use it as the pillars of heaven? Don't you think it was wronged? How could the black tortoise not hate its inexplicable death? The black tortoise in front of Feng Zichen was the reincarnation of the unlucky North Sea black tortoise in the past. It had the merit of supporting the heavens. Don't you think its background is great? If this black tortoise could embark on the path of cultivation, it would definitely be a future great magician. However, logically speaking, shouldn't this black tortoise be taken in by the Grand Master of Heaven? This was what they had agreed upon back then. Before the prime of Tongtian killed the North Sea black tortoise, he had promised to take its reincarnation into his sect and help it attain enlightenment. It was precisely because of this that the North Sea black turtle was willing to stretch out its neck and be cut into pieces by the prime of Tongtian. Otherwise, did they really think that the black tortoise of the North Sea was dead? How could it not know how to fight back when the other party had already come knocking on its door? The strength of the North Sea black tortoise could be seen from the fact that its 4 limbs could turn into pillars that supported the sky. Even if he wasn't a sage, he was still a top-notch existence among the great divines. Even if such an existence could not defeat the sect leader of Tongtian, it would not be easy for the sect leader to kill him. However, the truth was that the prime of Tongtian had killed the black tortoise effortlessly. Of course, this was because they had made a deal beforehand, which made the North Sea black tortoise give up resisting. TSK. However, since they had already made an agreement, Why hadn't Tong Tian accepted the reincarnation of the North Sea black tortoise into his sect after so many years? Instead, he had allowed it to wander outside. This doesn't make sense. One had to know that a sage's promise was as important as heaven and earth. It was impossible for him to break his promise. Since the prime of Tong Tian did not fulfill his promise, there must be a secret that ordinary people did not know. Oh right. This black tortoise seemed to have been found by Ao Shui in the beginning. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen's heart skipped a beat as he guessed a possibility. Without hesitation, he activated the purple eye of the heavenly path and looked at the black tortoise. Sure enough, he found the problem. Feng Zichen saw a faint trace of dragon qi on the black tortoise's body. Although it was faint, it was extremely pure. Obviously, it was made by the ancestral dragon. Good heavens! What's this again? Why is the ancestral dragon fighting with the prime of Tong Tian all of a sudden? Seeing this, Feng Zichen understood that the ancestral dragon had schemed against the prime of Tong Tian. Otherwise, after tens of millions of years, with the prime of Tong Tian's strength, he would have been able to find the reincarnation of the North Sea black tortoise. As the ancestor of the water clan, it was much easier for the ancestral dragon to find the reincarnation of the North Sea black tortoise than for the prime of Tong Tian. He just did not know what kind of enmity there was between the ancestral dragon and the prime of Tong Tian that made the ancestral dragon, who had not cared about the affairs of the world for many years, personally plot against the prime of Tong Tian. However, whatever enmity there was between them had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. Now what he needed to do was to take away this black tortoise. As the saying goes, if you don't take what the heavens give you, you will be punished. This black tortoise had appeared in front of Feng Zichen twice. It could be seen that the fate between the two was not shallow. This was the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens asked Feng Zichen to take this black tortoise away. If he did not take this black tortoise away, who knew what would happen in the future? Little fellow, you can be considered to be fated with me. Then let me ask you, are you willing to leave with me? Walking in front of the black tortoise, Feng Zichen asked with a smile. Yes, this little beast is willing. Thank you, Taoist priests, for taking me in. Although the black tortoise did not know the specific origin of Feng Zichen, it still vaguely remembered that the Emperor Fuxi was very respectful to the person in front of it. A person who even the emperor had to respect must have a very powerful background. It was an honor to be taken in by such a person. How could it refuse? Of course, it hurriedly nodded, afraid that the other party would change his mind if it nodded too slowly. Very well, then let's leave. Nodding, Feng Zichen waved his sleeve, and was about to leave with the black tortoise. But at this moment, several rainbow lights suddenly flew over from afar, and turned into human figures, landing in front of Feng Zichen. Hand over the primordial spirit treasure. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. As soon as those people appeared, they surrounded Feng Zichen and shouted loudly. Fieste. Killing people to steal the treasure? Blocking the road to rob? When I was weak back then, I didn't encounter such a thing. I didn't expect that I would encounter such a situation after I had achieved Tao. It's really quite rare. Surrounded by the crowd, Feng Zichen did not feel much anger in his heart. More than that, he felt that it was interesting. It was the first time that he was blocked and robbed. It was quite a refreshing feeling. Besides, as a transmigrator, was it appropriate to not be blocked and robbed? Was it worthy of his profession? If word got out, what would it look like? Wouldn't it be a disgrace to transmigrators? The people surrounding Feng Zichen were the most powerful cultivators who were alarmed by the phenomenon of the Khanate 9 Palaces 8 trigrams diagram. They were all in the realm of Daluo Jingxian. Otherwise, they would not have rushed over so quickly. To be honest, this kind of cultivation was considered very rare in this era. The 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect were only in the realm of Daluo Jingxian. However, these itinerant cultivators were at the same level. It was not known whether these itinerant cultivators were too outstanding, or the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect were too useless. Sigh. After sighing for a while, the novelty in Feng Zichen's heart passed. Immediately he ignored the crowd and walked away. The existence of ants was not worthy of his attention. However, he did not care about ants, but those ants cared about him. No, to be precise, they cared about the Khanate spirit treasure in his hands. The gap between the Khanate Daluo Taoist priests and the acquired Daluo Jinxian was too big. Not to mention the gap in strength, the gap in temperament was also unbearable to look at. Under such circumstances, if the Khanate Taoist priests were here, they would naturally be able to see that Feng Zichen was not to be trifled with. However, in the eyes of the acquired Daluo Jinxian, there was only the newly born Khanate spirit treasure in the eyes of the acquired Daluo Jinxian, and he completely ignored Feng Zichen. This was what it meant to be blinded by greed. Greed had blinded their rationality, and they had even lost their basic judgment. It was not without a price to be an expert of the acquired Dao. The cultivation time was too short, and they only cared about polishing their dermic powers. How could they have the time to polish their temperament? It was normal to be controlled by power if one's temperament was not enough. The acquired Dao had just been born, and it was far from perfect as the innate Dao. There were still many things to be perfected. It seemed that the three pure ones would be busy in the future. Just patching it was enough for them. Bastard. If you don't hand over the Khanate spirit treasure, don't even think about leaving alive. Perhaps provoked by Feng Zichen's arrogant attitude, everyone was furious. They cursed at him loudly as they took out their dermic treasures and attacked him. Rumble. However, before their attacks fell on Feng Zichen, they saw the Khanate divine thunder striking down from the sky and killing everyone present on the spot. This was not done by Feng Zichen, but by the spontaneous operation of heaven and earth. Who was Feng Zichen? He was the head of the four great gods, the supreme of heaven and earth. All the living beings in the untainted world, including the group of people who had just surrounded him, could be said to be his people. They dared to attack Feng Zichen, which was called offending their superiors. At this time, there was no need for Feng Zichen to attack. Heaven and earth would sense it and kill all these sinners who dared to offend their superiors. It could even be said that with Feng Zichen's identity, in the untainted world, no one below the Daluo Taoist priests could attack him. Otherwise, what awaited them would be divine punishment. The dignity of the supreme of heaven and earth would be protected by heaven and earth. After taking away the black tortoise, Feng Zichen was not in a hurry to return to the boundless starry sky. He had not wandered in the untainted world for a long time. Today he was thinking of traveling after a long period of silence. He planned to travel and relax. Moreover, he had not been to the human race for a long time. Now that he was relaxing, he could take the opportunity to take a look. Now the human race should be under the rule of the Shang dynasty. It was good to take a look and see how different it was from the Great Xia. In this way, Feng Zichen wandered around the untainted world. However, this state did not last long before it was destroyed by an accidental discovery. Just as Feng Zichen was traveling around, he suddenly sensed a trace of Taoist Kundi's aura. This aura was extremely weak, almost undetectable. It was only because Feng Zichen was very familiar with the aura of Saint Kundi that he realized that something was wrong. Otherwise, he would not have discovered it. Since he had discovered the traces of Saint Kundi, Feng Zichen was not in the mood to continue traveling. He immediately gave up his original plan and followed the aura to track down the whereabouts of Saint Kundi. Although he did not know the purpose of Saint Kundi secretly coming to the untainted world, it was not wrong for him to destroy it. Just like that, Feng Zichen followed the aura all the way. It was not until he arrived in front of an ordinary farmhouse's courtyard that the aura stopped abruptly. Curious, Feng Zichen walked closer and saw an ordinary family of 3. It was not ordinary. The child in this family should be the reincarnation of a disciple of the Western sect. Yes, the reincarnation of a disciple of the Western sect in ancient times. A proper Tai Jingxian, born as a Khanate life form. What? Is the reincarnation of an ordinary disciple of the Western sect worth Saint Kundi secretly coming to the untainted world? Even if he swaggered over and took him away, what's the problem? Something's wrong. There must be something wrong. There must be something wrong. Feng Zichen felt that since Saint Kundi was unwilling to leak the news and sneaked over, it meant that there must be something special about this disciple. With that thought in mind, Feng Zichen activated the purple eye of the heavenly Tao and continued to look at the child. However, the result was the same as before. Apart from being the reincarnation of Tai Jingxian, there was nothing special about that child. That was strange. Since there was nothing special about this child, why did Saint Kundi treat him so cautiously? He could not understand. He really could not understand. With doubts in his heart, Feng Zichen simply transformed into an ordinary human and settled down to observe the child closely. He wanted to see what Saint Kundi was up to. As for why he did not use the divine calculation of Great Yen to deduce, of course, that was because Feng Zichen did not want to alert the enemy. Any heavenly secrets related to the saint could not be deduced. No matter how exquisite the deduction method was, it could not be done. Because when one's strength reached the realm of the saint, even if one muttered their names, they would be sensed by them, let alone deducing the heavenly secrets related to them. They would definitely be sensed by them. Feng Zichen had yet to figure out what Saint Kundi wanted to do. Naturally, he could not alarm him in advance and force him to give up or change his plan. A mortal's life was only 100 years. To Feng Zichen, it was only the blink of an eye. He could afford to wait. Therefore, he waited here. Once Saint Kundi had any plans, he would not be able to escape Feng Zichen's eyes. And this wait lasted for 18 years. 18 years had passed. Back then, it was just an ordinary family. Now it was developed and completed a magnificent transformation from a farmer to a landlord. It could be said to be a reversal of life. Not only did they move to the city to live, but they also owned a big house and became a famous rich family in the city. And that child who was crying piteously for food back then had now grown into an adult. Yes. Ordinary looks and ordinary talent. Other than having rich parents, there was nothing special about him. He was the kind that couldn't be found in a crowd. Oh, that's not right. This child was especially kind. He was a famous honest person in the surrounding villages. This was not a compliment. P.S. 2922. There are still 78 left. Please subscribe. Chapter 705. When kindness was associated with honesty, it could only mean one thing. This person might be a little stupid and easy to bully. In fact, this child was not too mediocre. He could be said to be of average talent. However, he was the reincarnation of Tai Jingxian. If he was only of average talent, he would not be able to live up to his identity. He should be the heavenly son of the human clan. However, what happened to this child had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. When he learned the child's name, he had already figured out Kundi's plan. The child's name was Yang Tianyu. It was a very familiar name. Feng Zichen thought carefully, and found where he had heard this name in his distant memory. Wasn't this Yang Jian's father? Good heavens! Everything matched up. Saint Kundi was going to attack the heavenly court. After figuring this out, Feng Zichen was not in a hurry to point it out. Instead, he continued to live in seclusion. He planned to give Saint Kundi a surprise. Things were as Feng Zichen expected. Not long after Yang Tianyu grew up, Yaoji, who was in the heavenly court, came to the human world because she was chasing the fugitive from the heavenly court. As soon as Yaoji entered the human world, Saint Kundi's plan was activated. He silently made Yaoji fall into the love tribulation. At that time, Yaoji was still chasing the fugitive from the heavenly court without knowing that she had been set up. Under the secret push of Saint Kundi, the two of them finally met outside the Yang family village, and a big battle broke out. After that, the fugitive from the heavenly court escaped with serious injuries. Yaoji was seriously injured and unconscious. She was rescued by Yang Tianyu, who passed by. The plot began. Under normal circumstances, after the two of them went through a few hardships together, they would fall in love with each other. Then they would get married and live happily for decades. After that, they would be discovered by Haotian and be hunted down by the heavenly soldiers. But now it would not be like this. Because when the plot began, Feng Zichen also started to take action. He did not stop Saint Juanti from attacking, nor did he help Yaoji. He also did not interfere with Yang Tianyu so that they could not meet. Feng Zichen quietly left an incarnation here, then hurried back to the heaven. He wanted to drag Haotian over to watch the show. He wanted to know how Haotian would react if he knew in advance that Yaoji was plotted against by Saint Juanti and fell in love with a mortal. Just the thought of that scene was exciting. Cause trouble, cause trouble. Feng Zichen was doing something big right now. The reason for Yaoji's tragedy was that Haotian didn't know about it beforehand. But now, with Feng Zichen's manipulation, Haotian knew about this in advance. Would the tragedy repeat itself? How far was the human world from the heavenly court? However, under Feng Zichen's feet, it was only a step away. He took a step and arrived in front of the southern heaven gate. With another step, he entered the southern heaven gate and arrived in front of Haotian, who was resting in the Hall of Fragrance. Fellow Taoist Haotian, you've been very relaxed recently. Feng Zichen went straight to Haotian's side and said directly to him, "Relaxed? Fellow Taoist, don't tease poor Wei." Haotian was not surprised by Feng Zichen's arrival. He just shook his head and responded to his teasing with a wry smile. "Let's not talk about this. Why do you have time to come to poor Wei's place today?" Haotian did not want to chat with Feng Zichen, so he went straight to the point and asked, "Of course, I invited you to watch the show. Poor Wei has been very quiet recently, so he traveled to the untainted land. In the process of traveling, he happened to see a big show, so he wanted to invite you to watch it." At this time, Feng Zichen said mysteriously, "Watch the show? What show?" Hearing this, Haotian asked curiously. However, at this time, Feng Zichen did not have the time to chat with Haotian here. One must know that one day in heaven and one thing on earth could not be delayed. This delay might spoil the plan. Therefore, Feng Zichen did not explain to Haotian. Instead, he pulled him and walked to Yang village in the human world. "Don't ask so much. You'll know when you get there." While pulling Haotian, Feng Zichen did not forget to say. Just like this, Haotian was dragged by Feng Zichen and walked to the human world. How fast were the two of them? One moment, they were still in the Hall of Fragrance in the heavenly court. The next moment, they were already in Yang village, outside Yang Tianyo's house. "Fellow Taoist, why did you bring poor Wei here? It's just an ordinary farmyard, what's there to see?" Being dragged here by Feng Zichen, Haotian said with a face full of reluctance. However, he could not continue halfway through his words. It was as if his throat was blocked by something. He opened his mouth for a long time, but did not say a word. That was because from the corner of his eye, he saw a person who should not have been there in the ordinary farmyard. It was Yaoji, his sister Yaoji. At this moment, the Princess Royal of the Heavenly Court was doing something that did not match her identity. She was helping a mortal wash his clothes. At this time, Feng Zichen, who was beside Haotian, could clearly see that at this moment, Haotian's expression was very colorful. There was confusion, anger. All kinds of duplicated emotions intertwined on his face, but there was no joy at all. "Bastard." The next moment, Haotian exploded. He directly reached out to grab Yaoji, trying to suppress her. However, at this time, Feng Zichen suddenly stopped him. When Haotian just raised his hand and was about to grab Yaoji, Feng Zichen directly grabbed his arm and interrupted Haotian's magic. "Fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this?" After trying to struggle twice and finding that he could not break free, Haotian asked with a face full of anger. "Fellow Taoist, please calm down. Can't you see your sister's situation?" Looking at the furious Haotian, Feng Zichen shook his head. While speaking, he secretly used the mind-clearing spell to try to calm his mood. Loyalty was indeed Haotian's biggest weakness. Looking at Yaoji at this moment, he even lost his basic judgment, and did not notice anything wrong with Yaoji at all. Phew. Poor Wei was too impulsive. After being persuaded by Feng Zichen, Haotian finally regained his composure. The wisdom of an emperor returned to him. Love tribulation? Who did it? After regaining his composure, Haotian looked at Yaoji again, and found that something was wrong. In Haotian's eyes, a long red line suddenly appeared on Yaoji's body. That was the red line, the line of marriage. However, the red line on Yaoji's body was different from that of others. It was redder, dazzling and strange, as if blood would drip down at any time. The red line was like blood, which was the symbol of love tribulation. However, Yaoji usually stayed in the heavenly court and seldom communicated with outsiders. How could she be involved in love tribulation with others? It was obvious that she had been set up by others. After silently deducing for a moment, and finding that he could not deduce any information, Haoyan immediately understood that the one who set up his sister Yaoji must be a sage. After all, in the untainted land, only a sage could make him unable to deduce any information. The one who did it must be one of the 7 sages. As for who it was, although Haoyan did not know, Feng Zichen, who invited him to watch the show, must know. Thinking of this, Haoyan directly asked Feng Zichen, "Fellow Taoist, please tell poor Wei, which sage set up my sister?" Judging from his posture, it seemed that as soon as Feng Zichen told him the identity of the person behind the scenes, he would run over and risk his life. "Which sage is it? Don't you have the answer in your heart? Except for him, who else could do such a despicable thing?" Feng Zichen smiled. Feng Zichen did not point it out, but asked in riddles. "It's really him. Kundi, you are a sage in vain. You are really shameless to do such a despicable thing. It's really shameful for poor Wei to be in the same category as him. It's also because poor Wei was young and ignorant back then." She pitied the two of them and did not hesitate to risk the punishment of the Tao ancestor to open the door of the Purple Cloud Palace for them, which led to today's result. "I regret it so much." Although Feng Zichen said it vaguely, Haoyan still guessed the other party's identity at the first moment, and could not help but curse angrily. Among the sages, who else could do such a thing except Taoist Kundi? The 3 pure ones would not, and neither would Nuwa and Hutu. Saint Jiayin had always been low-key and would not. Then only Saint Kundi was left. In the untainted land, there were few things that Saint Kundi did not dare to do. What was the big bullying the small? He dared to plot against Dijun, let alone Haoyan. He had a criminal record. Is he going to deal with poor Wei? Over the years, poor Wei has been living in seclusion and not paying attention to the affairs of the world, which is to avoid them. But I didn't expect that poor Wei has done so much, but they still think that poor Wei is in the way and want to plot against poor Wei. They are really going too far. After coming back to her senses, Haoyan murmured unconsciously. She seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking Feng Zichen. From the moment she learned that Yaoji was plotted against by Kundi, Haoyan knew that Kundi's target was not Yaoji, but her. Yaoji's cultivation was only at the level of Tai Jingxian. What was there for Kundi to plot against? It was nothing more than using her to plot against her. It was because she understood this that Haoyan became angrier. Over the years, she had tolerated the sages again and again, and did not want to have a conflict with them. But she did not expect that her concession was regarded as weakness by the sages, so that the sages increasingly did not take her seriously, and acted more and more unscrupulously. Today, Saint Kundi's actions completely ignited the anger that Haoyan had suppressed for many years. As the saying goes, the more ruthless the suppression, the more intense the outburst. At this moment, Haoyan really wanted to kill the sages. "Fellow Taoist, please take care of my sister for a while. Poor Wei has something to do and needs to leave." After bowing to Feng Zichen, Haoyan was about to leave to go to Mount Shumi and ask Saint Kundi for an explanation. However, Feng Zichen did not intend to let Haoyan leave at this time. He felt that it was not enough now. He wanted to add fuel to the fire for Haoyan. "Fellow Taoist, please wait. You can go to Mount Shumi at any time, but don't you want to know how Kundi is going to plot against you?" After stopping Haoyan, Feng Zichen said with a serious face. Hearing this, Haoyan hesitated. She really wanted to know how Kundi was going to plot against her. How should I know? After hesitating for a while, Haoyan felt that what Feng Zichen said made sense. She could go to Mount Shumi at any time, so she asked. "It's easy." Feng Zichen smiled gently and reached out his hand. He opened his 5 fingers and grabbed at the void. There was suddenly one less female disciple on Mount Shumi. "Fellow Taoist, this is..." Looking at the disciple of the Western sect who suddenly appeared in Feng Zichen's hand, Haoyan seemed to have understood something. "Change." Feng Zichen softly said a word, and responded to Haoyan with practical actions. Without seeing how Feng Zichen attacked, The female disciple of the Western sect in his hand suddenly disappeared. At the same time, Yaoji, who was in a coma, suddenly appeared beside Haoyan. In the blink of an eye, Feng Zichen replaced Yaoji with the female disciple of the Western sect in his hand. Fellow Taoist, please work with me to shield the secrets of heaven, so that Saint Xuanti won't notice it in advance. After doing all this, Feng Zichen said to Haoyan with a smile, "That's how it should be." At this moment, Haoyan also understood Feng Zichen's plan and agreed. Then, the two of them worked together to change the secrets of heaven here, so that Saint Xuanti would not notice anything unusual. Although Saint Xuanti knew that the Western sect had lost a disciple, he did not take it to heart. That was because during this period of time, the Western sect had often lost disciples, and Saint Xuanti was already used to it. The ones who took action were naturally the great mediums of the primordial world. In order to find a way to get rid of the murderous aura in the bodies of the ferocious beasts, they had attacked many disciples of the Western sect over the years. They forced Xuanti and Saint Xuanti to expose the method of getting rid of the ferocious beasts. Feng Zichen and Haoyan's methods were so amazing that after turning the female disciple of the Western sect into Yaoji, she did not realize that she was a fake. Even the fake Yaoji thought that she was real, let alone Yang Tianyu, who was just a mortal. He did not notice anything unusual at all. In this way, the two of them experienced some things together and gradually got together. They even gave birth to 3 children. Seeing this, Haoyan's face turned green. If it were not for Feng Zichen holding him back, the two of them would have been killed by him. Don't worry. This is just the beginning. Let's continue watching. In the void, Feng Zichen held down Haoyan, who was about to leave, and said with a smile. At this moment, someone spread the news of Fairy Yaoji marrying a mortal, and giving birth to a child in the lower realm to the heavenly court. For a moment, the gods were in an uproar. Marrying a mortal. This was a violation of the heavenly law. Then, without waiting for Haoyan's order, the maker of the heavenly law, the South Pole Longevity Emperor, ordered Marshal Canopy to lead 10,000 heavenly soldiers and generals to the lower realm to capture Fairy Yaoji to protect the dignity of the heavenly court. The heavenly law was the most strict, and it was not allowed to be tarnished. Just when Marshal Canopy was gathering the army, Shaoqi, the youngest daughter of the Jade Emperor, hurriedly rushed over to report the news after receiving the news. P.S. Please subscribe, there are still 74 left. Chapter 706. However, before Shaoqi could see the fake Yaoji, he was grabbed by the furious Haoyan when he was still on his way to Yaoji. A bunch of bastards. Haoyan, who was already livid, saw Shaoqi sneaking over to inform him, and his face turned even uglier. FFF Royal Father. You. Why are you here? Shaoqi was so scared that she stuttered when she saw Haoyan. I'll deal with you when we get back. Even though Haoyan was angry, he couldn't teach his daughter a lesson in front of Feng Zichen, an outsider. He just suppressed his anger and glared at her, then sent her back to the Jade Pool and locked her up. Fellow Taoist, things have already come to this point. Is it necessary to continue watching? At this time, Haoyan really wasn't in the mood to continue watching. He just wanted to end this quickly. But Feng Zichen wasn't willing. He still wanted to take Haoyan to watch the complete version of Peach Mountain, Saving the Mother. Sigh. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. The good show is yet to come. Fellow Taoist Kundi spent so much effort to prepare a big show for you. How can you end it so hastily after just watching the beginning? In this way, how can I live up to fellow Taoist Kundi's painstaking efforts? Looking at the furious Haoyan, Feng Zichen said with a smile. Sigh. Seeing Feng Zichen's firm attitude, Haoyan couldn't force him. He could only continue watching. At this time, Marshal Canopy had already arrived with 10,000 celestial soldiers and celestial generals. They were fighting with Fairy Yaoji. Tisk tsk tisk. It seems that Fairy Yaoji is quite popular in the heavenly court. She even knows Marshal Canopy. Look at how easy he is. It's a bit too much. Looking at the battlefield below, Feng Zichen turned his head and joked with Haoyan. Canopy Marshal's performance in this battle was too obviously fake. 10,000 Heavenly River Navy joined forces and set up the Heavenly River Formation. They could even kill Daoyuo Jingxian, let alone Yaoji of Tai Jingxian. He could take him down with a flip of his hand. However, Canopy Marshal brought 10,000 celestial soldiers and celestial generals to capture Yaoji. Yaoji didn't swarm Yaoji. Instead, he fought Yaoji alone. Good heavens, you're putting on an act here. If this was not an act, how could he become the Canopy Marshal and lead the Heavenly River Navy with his IQ? He had long been killed by someone. Marshal Tian Preng isn't Poor Wei's subordinate. He's fellow Taoist Gao Chen's subordinate. Poor Wei's words might not have any effect on him. Even the Poor Wei doesn't know the reason behind his actions today. Perhaps, as you said, he has a good relationship with Yaoji. Hao Tian shook his head and smiled bitterly. Although he was the master of the heavenly court, not many of the immortals and gods in the heavenly court were his subordinates. Most of them were from the other 3 gods or the 5 celestial emperors. There were almost no direct descendants who belonged to him. Furthermore, they were all in a peripheral position and did not have any authority to speak of. Originally, the entire heavenly court belonged to Hao Tian. However, he had been dead for too long, and his forces were all divided up by the 8 celestial emperors. For example, the heavenly river was cleaned up by Great Emperor Gaochen when the dam broke last time. All of Hao Tian's forces were cleared out. The Heavenly River Navy was established at that time, and Canopy Marshal was also appointed at that time. Since he was able to become the Heavenly River Navy's commander, he was naturally one of Great Emperor Gaochen's subordinates. There was also Tai Jingxing. He was supposed to be loyal to Hao Tian, but now he was one of Great Emperor Ziwei's subordinates. Venus was one of the 5 stars of heaven and earth. It was one of the 365 main stars. Tai Jingxing was the innate star god that Venus gave birth to. As a star god, he naturally had to respect Great Emperor Ziwei. This was without a doubt. For example, the South Pole star god, South Pole Immortal Elder, thought that he could disrespect Great Emperor Ziwei because he had a saint as his backer. But what happened in the end? Great Emperor Ziwei stripped him of his innate star god identity. He did not care about Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning at all. Originally, Immortal Wang of the South Pole still had a chance to compete with Lei Zhe for the position of Great Emperor of the South Pole Longevity Emperor. But now he had lost his innate star god identity, and he was completely out of the game. Moreover, as an innate star god, he could be protected by Zhouxing. Becoming Daoyuo Taoist priests could be said to be a simple matter without any difficulty. Even if Immortal Wang of the South Pole was burdened by Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and had endless negative karma, he could still become Daoyuo Taoist priests with his identity as an innate star god. Zhouxing illuminated the universe, and it could be said that his merit was boundless. What was a mere negative karma to him? However, as Immortal Wang of the South Pole lost his innate star god identity, these benefits had nothing to do with him. As a result, he had no choice but to cultivate the postnatal Tao. How miserable! With such an example, the remaining innate star gods dared not to respect Great Emperor Ziwei. Naturally, they followed his lead. Therefore, Hao Tian, the Celestial Emperor, had nothing other than a title. He was just an empty shell. Fellow Taoist, you're a little too miserable. To be able to become a Celestial Emperor, like you, is also a kind of ability. Shaking his head, Feng Zichen said with a face full of admiration. This was true admiration, without the slightest hint of mockery. If he were in Hao Tian's position, he would have flipped the table and quit. However, Hao Tian was able to endure it. Just this kind of patience was enough to make Feng Zichen feel ashamed of his inferiority. Fellow Taoist, don't joke. Hao Tian waved his hand with a nonchalant expression. Whether Feng Zichen was really admiring or mocking him, he did not care. Mere honor and disgrace could no longer disturb his Tao heart. However, those fellow Taoists are indeed a little too much. There are so many good positions in the heavenly court, but they didn't leave a single one for you. It's really a little embarrassing to be so popular. At this moment, Feng Zichen suddenly said indignantly on behalf of Hao Tian. Looking at his indignant expression, those who did not know would think that he had been wronged. Feng Zichen said indignantly on behalf of Hao Tian. It could be said that he was right. He was really righteous. He could pat his chest and say that he did not plant a single person in the heavenly court. His subordinates were all gathered at the outermost edge of the boundless starry sky. Other than the establishment of the heavenly soldiers, the rest had nothing to do with the heavenly court. Even his salary, Feng Zichen did not pay the heavenly court. He paid for it out of his own pocket. Therefore, he had the right to speak up for Hao Tian. As for the matter of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, and the North Star Heavenly Emperor fighting for power in the heavenly court, and planting people everywhere, what did it have to do with Great Emperor Ziwei? He, the Great Emperor Ziwei, Penggu, and the Ziwei clan were upright and upright. They did not have any thoughts about the heavenly court. They only guarded their own boundless starry sky. The ones who were interested in the heavenly court, and planted people everywhere, were the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, and the North Star Heavenly Emperor. It had nothing to do with Great Emperor Ziwei. Feng Zichen was a professional at ridiculing himself. As for Feng Zichen's words, Hao Tian believed them, because he always believed that Feng Zichen was on the same side as him. Even though there were many unhappiness between the two of them, Hao Tian still thought so. Everyone knew that Great Emperor Ziwei was the sub-ruler of the three realms, the next Celestial Emperor. Since the position of Celestial Emperor would be his sooner or later, why would Great Emperor Ziwei fight for it now? With Hao Tian blocking the attacks of the saints, he could improve his strength and peace. Wasn't that good? He had too many benefits for the Celestial Emperor and Feng Zichen. Therefore, Hao Tian could not think of a reason why Feng Zichen would deal with him. Sigh, fellow Taoists, don't say any more. If those fellow Taoists want to fight, let them fight. Poor Wei doesn't care anymore. Poor Wei has long thought it through. In the Eldritch world, strength is the most important thing. Without strength, no matter how much power one has, it's just a dream that will burst at the first touch. Therefore, poor Wei has long lost interest in the power of the heavenly court. He only wants to achieve the Tao as soon as possible and cultivate to the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian realm, so that he can transcend the vanity of the heavenly court. I'll have to trouble you, fellow Taoist. After poor Wei transcends, you still have to clean up the mess of the heavenly court for him. Seeing Feng Zichen's angry look, Hao Tian comforted him. He really did not want to be the Celestial Emperor anymore. Now he wanted to become the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian as soon as possible, so that he could escape from the heavenly court and be free. He changed his title from the Celestial Emperor to the Jade Emperor. It might not be without the intention of weakening his connection with the heavenly court. By the way, if fellow Taoist is willing, you can arrange some people in the heavenly court. Anyway, the position of Celestial Emperor will be yours sooner or later. As if thinking of something, Hao Tian suddenly said to Feng Zichen. Just now, he had a flash of inspiration and suddenly understood something. He did not want to be the Celestial Emperor anymore. Why did he still have to deal with the matters of the heavenly court? It was better to leave these to Great Emperor Ziwei to deal with while he could focus on cultivation and strive to achieve the Tao as soon as possible. Hearing this, Feng Zichen was stunned for a moment. He had long known that once Hao Tian achieved the Tao, he would pass it to him. However, he did not expect Hao Tian to be so eager to pass on the position. He had not achieved the Tao yet, but he wanted to hand over the power of the heavenly court to him first. It was as if he was not afraid of others taking over him. In fact, he was even looking forward to this kind of thing happening. Even with Feng Zichen's experience, he was still stunned by Hao Tian's operation. From Hao Tian's serious eyes, Feng Zichen could be sure that he was not testing him. He really did not care. No wonder Hao Tian in the future would become a puppet. That was because he did not care at all. He was wholeheartedly seeking the Tao, and was not surprised by honor or disgrace. However, Hao Tian could say that, but Feng Zichen could not agree so readily. At the very least, he had to refuse 3 times before he could reluctantly agree. He agreed. Fellow Taoist, look, there are new changes below. Changing the topic, Feng Zichen pointed below and said. At this moment, in order to escape, the fake Yaoji suddenly took out a high-grade innate spirit treasure. Although this Yaoji was fake, Feng Zichen packaged her more realistically than the real one based on the principle of acting. Even if the real Yaoji came, she would become a fake in front of her. In this case, the magic treasure on the real Yaoji was naturally on the fake Yaoji. It seems that you have not stayed in the Purple Cloud Palace for so many years in vain. You have gotten a lot of good things. Looking at the innate spirit treasure in Yaoji's hand, Feng Zichen said. The high-grade innate spirit treasure in Yaoji's hand was called the Heavenly Eye. It was one of the 3 eyes of heaven, earth, and man. It could search all 3 realms and shoot out divine light. It was extremely extraordinary. It's just a little thing. It's not as rich as you. Hao Tian, who was born in the Purple Cloud Palace, definitely did not lack innate spirit treasures. However, compared to Feng Zichen, he was still a poor man. After all, the other party was sitting on the entire boundless starry sky. After a chaotic battle, the fake Yaoji was captured. Yang Tianyu and his eldest son, Yang Jiao, died. His second son, Yang Jian, and his youngest daughter, Yang Chan, escaped under the malice of Canopy Marshal. Not long after the fake Yaoji was captured, Feng Zichen suppressed her under Peach Mountain in the name of Hao Tian. What happened next was much simpler. As recorded in the story, Yang Jian apprenticed himself to a master and learned a lot of skills. He planned to split Peach Mountain to save his mother. You've gone too far. At this moment in the heavenly court, looking at Yang Jian who had mastered the divine skill, Hao Tian cursed loudly. Good Lord, it was fine that the 3 pure ones did not take him seriously. But how could their disciples not take him seriously? The master of heaven and earth, a half-step origin existence. Knowing that Yang Jian was wanted by the heavenly court, the disciple of the sect of enlightenment still dared to take him as a disciple and injured countless heavenly soldiers. As long as they cared about the existence of the heavenly court, this would not have happened. Clearly, they did not take Hao Tian and the heavenly court seriously. They really thought that as the disciple of a saint, they could do whatever they wanted in the untainted land. In the past, the disciples of the sect of enlightenment would not have dared to look down on the heavenly court. But since the North Star Emperor was killed by the saint, they became arrogant and did not take the heavenly court seriously at all. Yes, they even dared to kill the celestial emperor. What else did the saint not dare to do? With such a powerful master, how could the disciples of the sect of enlightenment not be arrogant? They really don't know what's good for them. Being looked down on by the saint, Hao Tian gritted his teeth and accepted it. After all, he was no match for the saint. But what was the saint's disciple? He was like an ant. Not to mention his identity as the celestial emperor. He could kill thousands of people with his own strength. So they dared to look down on Hao Tian. What else could it be other than courting death? When the celestial emperor killed, tribulations were born. The moment Hao Tian had the intention to kill the disciples of the sect of enlightenment, heaven and earth immediately sensed it. Unknowingly, countless tribulations gathered and wrapped around the primordial spirit of the second-generation disciples of the sect of enlightenment, turning into a death tribulation and hiding. The celestial emperor was the master of heaven and earth. He represented heaven and earth. Since ancient times, those who dared to look down on the celestial emperor, except for the saints, had to pay the price. The second-generation disciple of the sect of enlightenment was only at the level of Daoyuo Jingxian, but he dared to look down on the celestial emperor. And this was the cause of the God-conferment tribulation. The celestial emperor could not be humiliated. Looking down on the celestial emperor, they had to pay the price. Fellow Taoists, let's not bother about the disciples of the sect of enlightenment. Look at Yang Jian, he's about to split the Peach Mountain. At the side, Feng Zichen said as if he was enjoying the show. Split? Just because he's a golden immortal. He can't split the Peach Mountain. P.S. I caught a cold. I was so engrossed in writing that I did not even feel the temperature drop. Then I caught a cold. Miserable. Seeing how miserable I am, give me some monthly tickets and subscriptions. Chapter 707. Above the heavenly court, Hao Tian waved his sleeves. Magical power appeared, turning into talismans and enveloping Peach Mountain. Just then, Yang Jian raised his mountain-splitting axe and swung it down at Peach Mountain. Bang! The axe landed on the Peach Mountain with a deafening sound and a terrifying wave of energy, twisting the space around it. However, the attack that Yang Jian had pinned all his hopes on did not work. Not a single pebble fell from the Peach Mountain, not to mention splitting it open. How could this be? First, he looked at the axe in his hand, then at the undamaged Peach Mountain in front of him. His eyes were filled with disbelief. This was different from what his master, Immortal Yuding, had said. Immortal Yuding had said that he could easily split Peach Mountain with his strength and the divine weapon, mountain-splitting axe. But what was happening now? Yang Jian's mountain-splitting axe was no ordinary weapon. It was formed from the fragments of Yu the Great's innate merit spiritual treasure, mountain-splitting axe. Back then, Yu the Great had done everything he could to fight against the divine punishment. The mountain-splitting axe was shattered by the divine punishment during the tribulation. It turned into countless fragments and scattered throughout the Eldritch world. Some of the fragments fell into Kunlun Mountain and were obtained by the primeval Lord of Heaven. Perhaps it was because he was bored, or perhaps he was itching to do something. The primeval Lord of Heaven took the fragments and refined them with various innate spiritual materials, creating a supreme-grade acquired treasure. It was the mountain-splitting axe in Yang Jian's hand. Logically speaking, with Yang Jian's cultivation as a golden immortal and the mountain-splitting axe, he should be able to split Peach Mountain easily, just as Immortal Yuding had said. Unfortunately, the furious Haotian could not help but strengthen Peach Mountain. Haotian's cultivation was incredible. He stood at the peak of the Sage-to-Be realm, and was about to reach the realm of primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. With his blessing, even if Yang Jian had the real splitting mountain axe, he would not have been able to split the Peach Mountain, let alone the fake one. If it were Yu the Great, he would be able to do it. At the foot of Peach Mountain, Yang Jian hesitated for a long time. Finally, he raised the mountain-splitting axe in his hand and chopped at Peach Mountain with all his might. The last time might have been an accident. This time, he might be able to succeed. While Yang Jian was thinking about this, the mountain-splitting axe had already landed on Peach Mountain. However, the result was even worse than the last time. Peach Mountain remained unscathed. Instead, a terrifying force came and sent Yang Jian flying. Bang! Yang Jian, who had been sent flying, flew for a long distance before crashing heavily onto the ground. Impossible. Why can't I split it open? Ah! Yang Jian crawled up from the ground, seemingly unable to accept the blow of failure. A trace of madness gradually appeared on his face. Then Yang Jian strode forward, raised the mountain-splitting axe in his hand, and hacked at Peach Mountain. Once, twice, thrice, following Yang Jian's movements, a huge recoil struck him, causing his hands to crack and bleed profusely. However, Yang Jian didn't care at all. He only stopped when his arms were shattered and he lost consciousness. In less than 20 years, Yang Jian had transformed from an ordinary mortal to a golden immortal cultivator. His speed was indeed a little fast, but he had become a gold immortal in such a short time. How could he hone his mental state to match his realm? It was normal for him to lose his composure after a slight setback. Such a scene is truly moving. In the heavenly court, Feng Zichen couldn't help but exclaim after seeing Yang Jian's performance. Haotian snorted coldly and didn't say anything. My friend, if Yang Jian can't split Peach Mountain, Saint Juanti won't be able to continue his act. I think he won't be able to hold back his urge to strike soon. If he were to make a move, the Peach Mountain would fall. If that's the case, what do you plan to do next? As if thinking of something, Feng Zichen suddenly turned his head and asked Haotian. If Yang Jian couldn't split Peach Mountain, Saint Juanti's plan to suppress Haotian's prestige would fail. Moreover, it would boost Haotian's prestige. How could he be satisfied with that? He would have to strike. My friend, don't beat around the bush. Just tell me your plan. The poor Wei will cooperate. Haotian was also a smart person. Once he heard Feng Zichen's words, he understood what Feng Zichen meant. Haha, my friend, you're so straightforward. Then the poor Wei will speak frankly. Next, it's time for your sister, Yaoji. With a laugh, Feng Zichen said directly. Yaoji. My friend, you mean? Haotian faintly understood what Feng Zichen meant. At the same time, just as Feng Zichen had guessed, Saint Juanti was very confused. He couldn't understand Haotian's thoughts. Yaoji was his sister. Was he really ruthless enough to seal her forever instead of putting on an act for outsiders to see? However, despite his confusion, Saint Juanti still planned to help Yang Jian split Peach Mountain. After the severely injured Yang Jian was taken away by immortal Yuding in a hurry, there was no sound from him. Just like that, 60 years passed. After 60 years, Yang Jian reappeared and came to Peach Mountain again. Compared to before, he was stronger. His realm had risen from Golden Immortal to Tai Jingxian. At the same time, the mountain-splitting axe in his hand was stronger. Congenital Taoist rhymes surrounded him and shone. Apparently, it had evolved into a congenital spiritual treasure. It was easy to transform the mountain-splitting axe into a congenital spiritual treasure. That was to find more fragments of Yu the Great's mountain-splitting axe for it to devour. It seemed that in these years, the disciples of the Clan of Enlightenment had spent a lot of time looking for fragments of Yu the Great's mountain-splitting axe. That was how Yang Jian's mountain-splitting axe became a congenital spiritual treasure. "Mother, this time I will save you," Yang Jian shouted to the fake Yaoji, who was under the mountain. He couldn't wait to raise the mountain-splitting axe and chop down on Peach Mountain. At the same time, Saint Juanti also made his move. An imperceptible force emerged from the void and wrapped around the mountain-splitting axe's blade. Together with the axe light, it struck Peach Mountain. Rumble! The Peach Mountain was split open from the middle, and countless pieces of rubble rolled down from the top. The Peach Mountain shook violently, and the ground shook violently. The moment Peach Mountain shattered, Haotian flew into a rage. He beat the drum of immortal assembling and summoned all Celestial Court officials to punish those who had disdained the Celestial Court's laws. Hiss! The immortals and deities heard the drum and rushed over. As soon as they stepped into the Lingxiao Palace, they saw the three lofty emperors. They couldn't help but gasp. Something big was about to happen. The three emperors were the Jade Emperor, the Great of Ziwei, and the Great Emperor of the South Pole. How many years had it been since so many emperors had appeared in the Celestial Court? Even the Great of Ziwei, who usually stayed out of worldly affairs, had shown up. Something big was about to happen. The three emperors didn't look too happy. They were clearly in a bad mood. For a time, everyone even became careful with their breathing as they were deeply afraid that the slightest carelessness would infuriate the imperial monarch and cause them to lose their lives. Everyone, there is a cultivator from the lower realm called Yang Jian. He has disregarded the Celestial Court's laws and our dignity. He even treats us as if we are nothing. He is beyond arrogant. That is why I am sending troops to punish him today. I wonder which one of you is willing to take on this important task and capture Yang Jian to strengthen the Celestial Court's might. Haotian only spoke when he saw that most of the people had arrived. What? Punish Yang Jian? After Haotian finished speaking, the group of officials below immediately exploded. What a guy! Crusade against Yang Jian? Who in the three realms doesn't know that he is your nephew? Punish him? Isn't that just asking for trouble? Who would dare to meddle in the Jade Emperor's family affairs? Although they were fighting to the death now, it was hard to say when they would reconcile and become a close family again. If that was the case, what would happen to the people involved in this matter today? Since ancient times, anyone who dared to meddle in other people's family affairs would end up in trouble. The lesson was right in front of them. No one dared to get involved. Besides, no one would take responsibility for something like this where there were no benefits to winning and a lot of disadvantages to losing. Therefore, after Haotian finished speaking, the Lingxiao Hall fell into a strange silence. No one dared to reply. Bastard! As immortals, you have all cultivated for countless years and have boundless divine abilities. But now, no one dares to accept the challenge in the face of a brat. How embarrassing! Haotian roared angrily when he saw that no one dared to take on this important task in the heavenly court. Hearing this, everyone lowered their heads in shame, but no one dared to accept the challenge. Your Majesty, we are willing to go to the lower realm to capture that thief. After a long time, the North and South war gods under the South Pole Emperor couldn't stand the humiliation and stepped forward to ask for battle. Good. Our heavenly court does not lack loyal and brave people. Seeing this, Haotian was overjoyed and was about to let the two lead the troops. But at this moment, Feng Zichen suddenly interrupted. Wait! What do you mean? Haotian looked at Feng Zichen in confusion. Brother, as the saying goes, whoever started the trouble should end it. Since this matter started because of Yaoji, Yaoji should be the one to solve it. Otherwise, this matter will be troublesome in the future. With a mysterious smile, Feng Zichen said unhurriedly. That's true. You're right. Yaoji should be the one to deal with this matter. Then how about this? Yaoji will be the leader, and the North and South War gods will be the support. Together, we will go to the lower realm to capture that thief Yang Jian. Haotian nodded with a look of realization. Then he sent a palace maid to the Jade Pool to invite Yaoji over. At this moment, looking at the two echoing each other, the heavenly court officials were full of question marks. Why didn't they understand what the two emperors were saying? What do you mean by Yaoji is the leader? Didn't you press Yaoji under the Peach Mountain? Could it be that there were two Yaojis in the heavenly court? Or was the Jade Emperor so angry that he lost his mind? Just as everyone was wondering, the palace maid who went out first came in with Yaoji. Seeing Yaoji coming in, everyone was dumbfounded. Why was there another Yaoji in the heavenly court? Of course it was impossible. Could it be that the one in the lower realm was a fake? Confused, everyone looked at the Peach Mountain in the lower realm. That's right, there was another Yaoji, carefully protected by Yang Jian, walking out of the broken Peach Mountain. After looking carefully for a while, no one found anything wrong. That person was exactly the same as the Yaoji they were familiar with. Looking away, everyone looked at Yaoji. Wow, good girl. They were exactly the same. No one could tell the real one from the fake. However, everyone here was able to make it to the Lingxiao Palace. None of them were fools. Although they couldn't tell the real one from the fake, they could tell the situation. Since Yaoji could appear in the heavenly court, no matter who she was before, she could only be Yaoji now. Greetings, eldest princess. After being stunned for a while, everyone saluted her. Greetings, fellow cultivators. Yaoji returned the salute with a blank face. Today was really strange. Why did everyone who saw her have such a strange expression? As if they were trying to hide something. In order to eliminate Yaoji's love tribulation, and prevent it from affecting her future cultivation, Haotian directly changed Yaoji's memory, so that she would completely forget everything that happened in the lower realm. In Yaoji's memory, she had been cultivating in seclusion in the Jade Pool, hoping to break through to the realm of Daluo Jingxian. Jade Pool, there is an evil man in the lower realm who impersonated you and married a mortal and had a child. He caused a great disaster. Today, I called you here to lead the heavenly soldiers to take down that evil man to protect the dignity of the heavenly court. Are you willing? Haotian said directly without hiding anything. What? Impersonated me and married a mortal and had a child. Hearing this, Yaoji was first stunned, then her face darkened. At any time, reputation was very important to a woman. It was especially so for a woman of noble status. Therefore, after suddenly hearing this news, Yaoji's anger was imaginable. Which bitch impersonated me? I'm going to kill her. Furious, Yaoji directly had the intention to kill. She is in the lower realm. Later, take my Haotian mirror to catch her. I also want to know who has the guts to impersonate the eldest princess of the heavenly court. Haotian said angrily as he took out the Haotian mirror and handed it to Yaoji. Yes, your majesty. Yaoji took the Haotian mirror with trembling hands and thanked him. She wasn't agitated. She was angry. Everyone, who is willing to go to the lower realm with Yaoji to catch the thief. After that, Haotian looked at the ministers and continued to ask. Me. Different from last time when no one answered, after confirming that the Yaoji in the lower realm was a fake, they changed their previous attitude and eagerly asked to fight. Force. The corner of Haotian's mouth twitched. He casually chose a few pleasing people, and asked them to go to the lower realm with Yaoji and the North and South gods of war. Chapter 708. Mother, let's take a rest here. At the foot of Peach Mountain, Yang Jian was helping the fake Yaoji to a shady place to rest. The fake Yaoji was not Haotian's sister, so he showed no mercy when he attacked her. After being trapped under Peach Mountain for so long, the fake Yaoji had suffered a lot. Even though she had escaped, she was still weak. Her strength was almost crippled. At this moment, the fake Yaoji was even weaker than a mortal. Haotian is so cold-blooded that he didn't care about their sibling relationship. He was so cruel to my mother. Yang Jian said angrily when he felt the fake Yaoji's weakness. He's so cruel. He killed Tianyu and Jiao? Speaking of Haotian, the fake Yaoji was also furious. Her husband and eldest son were killed by the heavenly soldiers under Haotian's orders. Thump, thump, thump. Just as the two of them were venting their hatred for Haotian, the sound of war drums suddenly rang out in the sky. The heavenly soldiers had arrived. Haotian, you're so cruel. You really don't care about our sibling relationship. Do you want to kill my family? Seeing the large number of heavenly soldiers in the sky, the fake Yaoji couldn't help but shout angrily. Haotian was so cruel that he didn't leave them a way out. Those who could become heavenly soldiers were the elites of the primordial races living in the heaven realm. Each heavenly soldier was at least a divine immortal. Those who could become heavenly generals were golden immortals. The 10,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals set up a primordial formation. They could even kill Daoyuo Jingxian, not to mention Yang Jian. Mother, don't be afraid. Let's see how I'll take you out. Facing the 10,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, Yang Jian still didn't show any fear. It was as if the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were nothing to him. However, the next person who suddenly appeared made Yang Chang unable to maintain his calm expression. His expression became one of disbelief. Sibling relationship? Bitch, who are you? You're just an ant. How dare you talk about sibling relationship with His Majesty? Take a good look at yourself. Are you worthy? Amidst the colorful clouds, Zhen Yaoji gracefully flew over and appeared in front of Yang Jian and his mother. At that moment, both Yang Jian and the fake Yaoji were stupefied. They stood rooted to the ground and stared blankly at the real Yaoji who had suddenly appeared. Obviously, he couldn't understand why an identical version of himself would suddenly appear. Who are you? Why did you impersonate me? After being stunned for a while, the fake Yaoji came back to her senses and questioned the real Yaoji with an ugly expression. That's right. Where did you come from? How dare you impersonate my mother? On the other side, Yang Jian scolded the fake Yaoji after she finished speaking. Obviously, they didn't think they were fake. Hee. Seeing this, Zhen Yaoji was so angry that she laughed. That fake was really arrogant. She had already seen her in person, but instead of thinking about how to escape after her plan had been exposed, she had bitten her back. That was really something. Did that imposter really think that no one in the heavenly court could see through his disguise? At this moment, the moment Zhen Yaoji appeared, those great mediums who didn't want to pay attention to this matter suddenly became spirited and cast their eyes over here. They smelled the excitement. There would be a good show to watch in the untainted land. At this point, it was very easy to sort things out. It was obvious that someone wanted to use Yaoji to plot against Haotian. Unexpectedly, Haotian's skills were better. Not only did she detect the other party's plot in advance, but she also turned the other party's plot against her. That was why the scene before his eyes had happened. Next, it was time to see how the person behind the scenes would deal with it. Putting aside the onlookers, the person behind the scenes, Saint Juan-Ti, was a little anxious at this moment. Oh no! Poor Wei has been set up. On Mount Meru, Saint Juan-Ti, who was paying attention to the development of the situation, knew that he had been set up the moment he saw Zhen Yaoji appear. After the other party saw through his plan, not only did he not expose it, but he also played along and put on a big show for him, trapping him. He had been hunting geese all year round, but he was pecked in the eye by a geese today. Saint Juan-Ti's mood could be said to be extremely bad. However, although he was in a bad mood, things had to continue. Since the plan had been exposed, Juan-Ti had to consider the impact of this matter on him. In this matter, was he really exposed? Also, who was the fake Yaoji? He couldn't make a person appear out of thin air. The fake Yaoji must have a background. Thinking of this, Saint Juan-Ti couldn't help but silently deduce the identity of the fake Yaoji. But this calculation really gave him a fright. At this time, there was no need for Feng Zichen and Haotian to hide the secrets of heaven. Therefore, Saint Juan-Ti easily figured out that the fake Yaoji was the missing female disciple of the Western sect. F***ck. After figuring out this matter, Saint Xuantiai's heart was about to explode. Then he reached out his hand without hesitation and grabbed the fake Yaoji. He actually wanted to kill her. Saint Xuanti wanted to kill her. In any case, the identity of the fake Yaoji would not be revealed in front of the world. Otherwise, it would be a devastating blow to the reputation of the Western sect. Although Saint Xuanti also knew that the female disciple was innocent, and had obviously been schemed against by others. But at this moment, for the reputation of the Western sect, he had to kill her. Compared to the reputation of the Western sect, her life and death were still too light. Besides, dying for the Western sect was the glory of being a disciple of the Western sect. Sacrificing her to protect the reputation of the Western sect. Even if that disciple knew, he would feel honored and not resentful. Whoosh, the void shattered silently, and a supreme power quietly emerged. It was about to descend on the fake Yaoji and completely erase her, leaving no trace of her past or future. However, how could Feng Zichen and Hao Yan, who had long been prepared, let Saint Xuanti kill the fake Yaoji in front of them? Then wouldn't their performance be in vain? Rumble. Just as that power was about to descend upon the fake Yaoji, an equally vast power emerged. Around it, bejeweled jade palaces, heavenly palaces, and 33 heavens were formed. In the blink of an eye, a magnificent heavenly court appeared, reflecting all the worlds in the heavens and firmly protecting the fake Yaoji. Although Saint Xuanti was strong, he could do nothing in the face of the joint forces of Feng Zichen and Hao Yan. Therefore, no matter how he attacked, he could not break the defense set up by the two of them and kill the fake Yaoji. Damn it! At this time, how could Saint Xuanti not understand that the two emperors in the heavenly court had obviously sensed his plan long ago, and were working together to act him? After understanding this, Saint Xuanti did not continue to attack. Instead, he walked towards Saint Jiayin. It was inevitable that the fake Yaoji's identity would be exposed. What he needed to do now was to discuss countermeasures with Saint Jiayin to minimize the impact. The scene returned to Peach Mountain. Evildoer, show your true form. Seeing that Zhen Yaoji did not answer, Yang Jian was angry. He activated his third eye and shot out a divine light, trying to beat her back to her original form. However, seeing Yang Jian activate his third eye, Zhen Yaoji was undoubtedly angrier. Good lord, this fake is really capable. She can even imitate the third eye. Suddenly, a divine rune appeared on Zhen Yaoji's forehead. It looked exactly the same as the heaven's eye on Yang Jian's forehead. At the same time, it shot out a ray of divine light that collided with Yang Jian's divine light. Boom! The two identical divine lights collided and burst open in the void. Terrible waves rippled and broke through layers of clouds. When everything calmed down, the result was a draw. The two divine lights canceled each other out at the same time. Third eye. Why do you have a third eye? Noticing the third eye on Zhen Yaoji's forehead that was exactly the same as his, Yang Jian's face was full of confusion and shock. He wasn't the only one. The other great divines who noticed this were also at a loss. Weren't all primordial spiritual treasures unique? How could there be two identical primordial spiritual treasures? My fellow Taoist, you're really good. Even Poor Wei can't tell if the third eye you imitated is real or fake. Looking at the third eye on Yang Jian's forehead, Hao Qian could not help but sigh with emotion. Even he, the original owner of the third eye, did not notice the abnormality of the fake third eye, let alone outsiders. That was why Hao Qian sighed with emotion. Feng Zichen's method of faking was really to pass off as genuine. It's just a small trick. It's not worth mentioning. Hearing Hao Qian's praise, Feng Zichen hurriedly expressed his modesty. However, the undisguised smile on his face revealed that he did not mean what he said. In terms of fake skills, if Feng Zichen claimed to be second, no one in the untainted land would dare to claim to be first. The third eye on Yang Jian's head was not a primordial spiritual treasure at all, but a primordial divine ability with the same function as the third eye. Everything in the world was made up of Tao patterns, and primordial spiritual treasures were no exception. As for Feng Zichen, because of his identity as the great Taoist priests, he had the ability to see through the origin of all things. The essence of all things in the world could not escape his eyes. The third eye was just a top-grade primordial spiritual treasure, With just a glance, Feng Zichen remembered its structure clearly. With a little effort, he could deduce a divine ability with the same power as the third eye. What an evil creature. Today I'd like to see who you are. How dare you pretend to be me? Furious, Yaoji did not say much. She directly took out the Haotian mirror and shone it at the fake Yaoji. The Haotian mirror was one of the top 10 primordial spiritual treasures in the untainted land. Its power was second only to primordial ultimate treasures. Not to mention the fake Yaoji, even Feng Zichen could not escape the detection of the Haotian mirror without using magic treasures. Swish! The divine light shone on the fake Yaoji, causing her appearance to change dramatically. Although she was still attractive, she was completely different from Yaoji. At the same time, Feng Zichen also released the seal on the fake Yaoji, causing her memory to recover. Of course, these memories were also fake. Ah, Teacher Kundi, you lied to me. As soon as she recovered her memory, the fake Yaoji vented her hatred. However, her target was not Feng Zichen and Haotian, but her teacher, Saint Kundi. Feng Zichen changed her memory and put all the blame on Saint Kundi. For example, in those fake memories, it was Saint Kundi who asked her to pretend to be Yaoji and marry Yang Tianyu, and promised to protect her family. Unexpectedly, she was soon stabbed in the back by Saint Kundi. First of all, it was Saint Kundi who told the heavenly court about her marriage with Yang Tianyu. Secondly, in order to further intensify the conflict, the people who killed Yang Tianyu and Yang Jiao were also from the Western sect. Well, in order to make it more realistic, the people who killed Yang Tianyu and Yang Jiao were the spies of the Western sect in the heavenly court. In order to find these two people, Feng Zichen also spent some effort. Although there were many loopholes in these memories, all the concepts about this matter in the world were distorted by Feng Zichen and Haotian, so that the fake Yaoji would not have any doubts. Not only her, but all the creatures in the untainted land who had not reached the Daluo Taoist priest's realm would not doubt this matter. The primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was so powerful. With such a memory, how could the fake Yaoji not hate Saint Kundi, who planned all this? She killed her husband and son. This was an irreconcilable hatred. Hearing the fake Yaoji call out Saint Kundi's name, the great mediums who were watching the show immediately knew who was behind the scenes. TSK, TSK, TSK. They did not expect that Saint Kundi would be schemed against one day. This scene was too wonderful. Princess Royal, please wait. As long as you are willing to let my son go, I am willing to go to the heavenly court with you. I am even willing to help you identify the real culprit behind the scenes. After recovering her memory, the fake Yaoji did not want to resist and directly talked with Yaoji about the conditions. At this time, the fake Yaoji was most worried about her son Yang Jian. She offended a saint and would definitely die. But her son still had a bright future. She could not drag him down. Before dying, she had to do something for Yang Jian's future. Yaoji, who was about to give the order to kill the two people, could not help but hesitate when she heard this. This matter involved a saint. She really did not know how to deal with it. Take them down together. Just when Yaoji was hesitating, Feng Zichen's voice suddenly echoed in everyone's ears and made the decision for her. Since when were sinners qualified to talk about conditions? As long as they agreed to the fake Yaoji's request, where would the dignity of the heavenly court go? Besides, as long as they got the person, the heavenly court would do whatever they wanted. The heavenly court had many ways to deal with a disabled Tai Jingxian. How could the means of cultivators be judged by common sense? At Feng Zichen's order, the 10,000 heavenly soldiers and generals immediately moved. They formed a large formation and surrounded Yang Jian and his mother. Chapter 709. 10,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, plus Yaoji and the 3 Tai Jingxian. Even if Yang Jian had become a Daluo Jingxian, it would be difficult for him to escape arrest. Needless to say, he had a burden with him. In order to take care of the seriously injured fake Yaoji, Yang Jian certainly could not exert his full strength. The enemy was strong and he was weak. In addition, it was difficult for him to exert his strength. Yang Jian and his mother were naturally captured by the heavenly soldiers. As for immortal Yu Ding, who was hiding in the dark, he wanted to save his disciple. However, in the boundless starry sky, on a bright white star, Taibai Jinxing was silently watching him. At that moment, immortal Yu Ding felt a terrifying pressure attacking him, imprisoning him in the void and cutting off his perception of the acquired Tao. Taibai Jinxing was the innate star god born by Venus. As early as the Heavenly Emperor, he had successfully attained the realm of Daoyuo Taoist priests. With such strength, it was not easy to deal with immortal Yu Ding. In front of this power, immortal Yu Ding, the second disciple of Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, was as powerless as a mortal. He did not dare to move, and he could not move. If he did not care about the cost, he could naturally break this imprisonment, but in that way he might die. Therefore, immortal Yu Ding could only hide in the void and watch his disciple Yang Jian being taken away by the heavenly soldiers. When Yang Jian was taken to the heavenly court, Taibai Jinxing withdrew his gaze from immortal Yu Ding. Phew! The moment Taibai Jinxing withdrew his gaze, the power that imprisoned immortal Yu Ding also disappeared, allowing him to regain his freedom. Is this the real Daoyuo Jingxian? After regaining his freedom, immortal Yu Ding was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he continued to stay where he was, recalling the power that had imprisoned him just now. The moment he met Taibai Jinxing's eyes, immortal Yu Ding understood his realm. Like him, he was also in the realm of Daoyuo Jingxian. However, Taibai Jinxing had attained the innate Dao and was called Daoyuo Taoist priests. However, he had attained the acquired Dao and could only be called Daoyuo Jingxian. Innate and acquired, there was only one word difference. However, the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. As a fellow Daoyuo Jingxian, the other party could easily kill him, and he couldn't even resist. This was the difference between them. If he was not the disciple of the primeval Lord of Heaven, he would have died today. That was not right. If he was not the disciple of Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, he might not be weaker than that person today. He might even be stronger. One had to know that perfected Yu Ding was also a person with a great background. He was formed from Panga's teeth, and was also a top Khanate godfiend in the world. It was truly a case of a single misstep leading to a subsequent misstep. Because of Taibai Jinxing, perfected Yu Ding's Dao heart was stirred. He was supposed to shine brightly. Taoist priests. At this moment, a desire for the Taoist priests rose in immortal Yu Ding's heart. Your Majesty, the criminal from the lower realm has already been captured by the heavenly soldiers. Please punish him, Your Majesty. Yaoji, who had returned to the heavenly court, reported to Haoyan. Behind her was Yang Jian and his mother, who were chained up. Send them to the heavenly prison, and behead them in a few days. Looking at the two people on the ground in disgust, Haoyan waved his hand impatiently, and ordered people to send Yang Jian and his mother to the heavenly prison, so as not to dirty his eyes. Yes, Your Majesty. Immediately, two heavenly generals in the Lingxiao Palace stood up and accepted the order. They escorted Yang Jian and his mother to the Nine Heavens Thunder territory. The heavenly prison was the 36 Thunder prisons, which were evenly distributed in the Nine Heavens Thunder territory. In the court, after Yang Jian and his mother were taken down, Haoyan announced the end of the court. The immortals and gods bowed and left one after another. Soon, there were only 3 high and mighty figures left in the huge Lingxiao Palace. The Jade Emperor, the Great Emperor of Ziwei, and the Great Emperor of the South Pole. Fellow Taoist, are you still going to choose to back down this time? Turning his head to look at Haoyan, Feng Zichen said solemnly. This question was naturally whether Haoyan wanted to take revenge on Saint Juanti, and Haoyan's answer would determine their attitude towards him in the future. He had been bullied to this extent by Juanti. If Haoyan still chose to tolerate it, then this person was really not worthy of his attention. Excessive tolerance was a sign of cowardice. And the strong could fail, but they could never be cowardly. A cowardly person, no matter how hard he worked, had no possibility of becoming primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. There were no cowards in front of the great Dao. No. Previously, the poor Wei thought wrongly. She thought that her concession could be exchanged for their understanding. However, they seemed to take the poor Wei's concession as a sign of cowardice. As a result, they repeatedly looked down on the poor Wei. Even their disciples did not take the poor Wei seriously. The prestige of the heavenly court has also plummeted. It's time for the poor Wei to move around, so that others won't look down on her. Moreover, it's time for the heavenly court to re-establish its prestige. Haotian sighed and said in an inexplicable tone. Then, a strong fighting spirit rose from his body, and spread to the entire primitive world in a wave-like manner with the Lingxiao Palace as the center. Rumble. At that moment, the world was roaring, and the myriad Dao let out a whine of submission. For the first time, all living beings sensed the majesty of Heavenly Emperor Haotian, and could not help but tremble under this power. Whoosh! The majesty swept across Mount Meru and pressed the living beings on it to the ground. They could not stand up as if they were worshipping the heavenly court. Not good. Disaster is coming. Sensing the rising fighting spirit above the heavenly court, Saint Jiayin and Saint Xuanti immediately understood that disaster was coming. They were obviously going to take revenge. At the same time, the great mediums of the primitive world were awakened by this fighting spirit, and looked at the heavenly court with high spirits. The big show was about to begin. Who would win the battle between the heavenly emperor and the saint? Everyone was looking forward to it. Sometimes blindly compromising will not give you the peace you want. Instead, it will make them feel that you are weak and easy to bully, and it will encourage them to become even more aggressive. Nodding, Feng Zichen said. Haotian's biggest mistake was not to give in, but to overestimate himself. He thought that when he became the heavenly emperor, he was already at the same level as the saint. But in fact, even if Haotian became the heavenly emperor, in the eyes of the saint, he was still the Taoist child of the past. The difference in status was so great that Haotian's concession was naturally a sign of weakness in the eyes of the saint. If Feng Zichen was in Haotian's position, not only would the saint not think that his concession was a sign of weakness, but they would also owe him a favor and thank Feng Zichen for giving them face. The same performance, but with different positions, would bring about different results. Therefore, the first thing that Haotian had to do was to let the saints know him again. He had to tell the saints that the current Haotian was no longer the Taoist child that was looked down upon by others, but the heavenly emperor Haotian of the primordial world, an existence on the same level as them. Only in this way would the saints look at Haotian again, and not take his concession as weakness. Fellow Taoist, to them, your strength alone may not be enough, but you are not alone. Behind you, there is the heavenly court, the 4 heavenly emperors, and the Tao ancestor in the purple cloud palace. So, how about we deal with the problem in a different way? Show a little strength and let the saints know our determination. Perhaps in the future, they will have scruples when they do things. Even if you fail, what else do you have to lose? Is it the position of the heavenly emperor? Staring at Haotian, who was full of fighting spirit, Feng Zichen continued to provoke him. He even used the power of bewitchment when he spoke. Just the fighting spirit was not enough. It had to be raised to the point of releasing killing intent to explain Haotian's determination. Yes. It's time for the saints to get to know me again, and at the same time, settle the karma between the heavenly court and them over the years. Under Feng Zichen's bewitchment, everything that the saints had done to him over the years appeared in Haotian's mind one after another, making him even angrier. Gradually, a wisp of killing intent appeared in his eyes. Rumble. Between heaven and earth, a blood-red thunderbolt suddenly appeared, accompanied by a deafening sound of thunder. The heavenly emperor moved to kill, and heaven and earth resonated with it, giving birth to all kinds of strange phenomena to show ominous signs. At the same time, the killing intent floating in the void, under the guidance of an inexplicable force, gradually gathered in one place, forming the embryonic form of a new great calamity of heaven and earth. When this great calamity was completed, heaven and earth would usher in a new calamity, the immortal God calamity, also known as the God investiture calamity. Fellow Taoist, do you want to make a move? Feng Zichen suddenly said to Haotian when he felt that the time was almost right. Of course. It's time to end the humiliation that poor Wei has suffered all these years, as well as the blood feud between fellow Taoist Gaochen. Haotian stood up from the emperor's throne and said with killing intent. Then he took a step forward and directly left the heavenly court, taking the lead to kill his way to Mount Meru. Haha. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I'll go with you. After Haotian left, Feng Zichen and the South Pole Emperor also stood up and followed Haotian to Mount Meru. The three emperors had left the heavenly court, and there was a killing calamity on Mount Meru. The Western sect is going to be in big trouble this time. I've already said that Saint Xuanti would have to pay the price sooner or later for being so arrogant. Now retribution is coming. The three emperors swaggered out of the heavenly court, and their killing intent was not concealed at all, pointing directly at Mount Meru. At this point, everyone understood what the three emperors meant. They were going to join forces to kill their way to Mount Meru. Saint Xuanti was going to be defeated this time. In a one-on-one battle, the three emperors might not be a match for the saint. However, if the three emperors joined forces, their power would increase exponentially. It was definitely not something that the two of them could resist. Everyone had witnessed this with their own eyes when they surrounded and killed the demon ancestor Rahu back then. Although the four emperors had joined forces at that time, and now that the three emperors had joined forces, their power would inevitably decrease. However, the two of them were not the demon ancestor Rahu. Seeing that Saint Xuanti was about to fall, not only did the great divine abilities of the primordial world not have the slightest bit of sympathy, but they were also gloating. Even the other saints were the same. Saint Xuanti deserved such an outcome. Back then, in order to strengthen the Western sect, Saint Xuanti came to the East to save all living beings. He was really unscrupulous. When he saw those with good talent, he did not care if they had a master or not. He would go up and say that they were fated with the Western sect and forcefully send them away. Even Xianqing was almost converted by Saint Xuanti back then if Tao ancestor Hongjun had not saved him. From this, it could be seen how Saint Xuanti's actions were. He had offended almost all the great divine abilities of the primordial world. Because of this, many people were secretly waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Seeing that Saint Xuanti was unlucky, everyone was happy. Why would they help? Feng Zichen and the other two were so powerful, so Xuanti was naturally prepared. When the three of them arrived at Mount Meru, a Khanate array had already risen on Mount Meru. The Khanate mind-cleansing Bodhi array. It was one of the top 10 array formations of the primordial world, the strongest array formation of the Western sect. It was formed by the wisdom of the two saints. This array did not use a Khanate numinous treasure as the array core, but two saints as the array core. Its power was absolutely terrifying. Fellow Taoist Haotian, this is indeed Poor Wei's fault. Poor Wei apologizes to you here. How about you leave now? On Mount Meru, looking at Haotian who was striding over, Saint Xuanti still spoke even though he was unwilling. In his opinion, although he was wrong, Haotian was just a boy with a low status. He had already given Haotian enough face by apologizing to him as a saint. At this time, Haotian should stop when he was ahead and leave. At this point, Saint Xuanti still looked at Haotian with his old eyes. However, he did not know that Haotian had changed at this moment. He was like an unsheathed long sword, showing his own sharpness without hiding. Apologize. An apology is enough? Saint Xuanti, you are really shameless. Seeing the undisguised contempt in Saint Xuanti's eyes, Haotian was undoubtedly even angrier. Just because he was a Taoist child, the saint looked down on him so much? That was enough. In that case, let me tear down your Mount Meru and then apologize to you. How about that? Rage burned in his heart. As Haotian spoke, he could not help but draw out a divine sword and swing it at Mount Meru. Whoosh! Bright sword light burst out with boundless power, enough to destroy everything. However, Mount Meru, which was facing the sword light, was unharmed. No matter how strong Haotian was, it was impossible for him to break through the blockade of two saints and destroy Mount Meru. However, as he moved, it was as if he had sent a signal. Feng Zichen and the South Pole Emperor moved at the same time. A vast starry sky appeared in Feng Zichen's hand and smashed toward Mount Meru. A boundless sea of thunder rose and fell in the hands of the South Pole Emperor. Like a vast ocean, it surged toward Mount Meru. In the face of the powerful attacks of the three, the two saints would certainly not sit still and wait for death. Endless divine light bloomed from their bodies and poured into Mount Meru under their feet. Rumble. The innate mind-calming Bodhi formation operated quickly. and evolved into a sea of golden lotuses in front of Mount Meru. Chapter 7:10. Rumble. The Milky Way fell and the Thunder Sea surged, entangling with the Golden Flower Sea. It was a shocking scene. At that moment, the world was shaking and the great Tao was wailing. The aura of destruction reverberated between heaven and earth as if doomsday had arrived. Kill. After the first blow, Feng Zichen and the other two stepped forward, each displaying their strongest moves, and blasted toward Mount Meru. Facing the powerful attacks of the three, the two saints did not choose to fight back. Instead, they used all their strength to activate the innate mind-calming Bodhi formation to the limit. Rumble. The formation was roaring and Mount Meru was shaking. The two seemed to have reached a resonance and filled the air with endless Taoist rhymes. Then he saw an illusionary figure of a Bodhi tree blotting out the sky, and an illusionary figure of a green lotus, surrounded by Taoist rhymes slowly appearing in the sky. Boundless divine light poured down, enveloping the entire Mount Meru. In this battle, the two saints of the Western sect had made up their minds to defend. It was not because they were in the wrong first and were embarrassed to attack Haoyin. It was because they knew that this battle would not last long. The way of heaven would not allow the three emperors to continue fooling around. Although Mount Meru was located outside of time and space, and was not in the untainted world, it was still too close to the untainted world. Once the three emperors unleashed their full strength, the terrifying power would spread and definitely affect the untainted world. At that time, in order to protect the untainted world, the way of heaven would interfere and forcibly end the battle. What Zhuan-Ti and the other two had to do was to guard Mount Meru firmly before the way of heaven intervened in the battle to prevent it from being broken into pieces by the three emperors. Feng Zichen and the other two naturally knew what Zhuan-Ti and the other two could understand. Therefore, they used all their strength from the beginning to try to break through Mount Meru in the shortest time possible, and do their best to destroy the Western sect. However, they had obviously underestimated the means of Zhuan-Ti and the other two. No matter how they attacked, when the magical powers hit Mount Meru, it was useless except for splashing out ripples. Since the last time Mount Meru was smashed, Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Yin learned from their painful experience, and used all means to improve the defense of Mount Meru to prevent the same thing from happening again. Unexpectedly, their defense was put to use not long after it was set up. It was a coincidence that the three imperial emperors had joined forces to attack. Damn it! What a hard turtle shell. Seeing that the three of them were still unable to break through the defense of Zhoxing Mountain, Feng Zichen made up his mind, and was about to forcefully summon the Zhoxing map that was in the midst of upgrading. Unfortunately, just as he was about to make a move, an extremely oppressive aura suddenly spread out in the void. Then, dark clouds covered the sky, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The heavenly Tao is about to descend. Not good. Seeing this scene, Feng Zichen and the other two immediately understood that there was not much time left for them. If they could not break through Mount Meru before the heavenly axiom completely descended, then their plan for this expedition could be considered to have come to an end. Immediately, Feng Zichen did not hesitate and directly summoned the Zhoxing map from the deepest part of the boundless starry sky. Boom! The void shattered with a loud bang, and an ancient scroll broke through the air. In an instant, a powerful aura suddenly erupted and swept across the universe. That was the pressure of an upper-grade innate treasure. Hundreds of thousands of years had passed, and the Zhoxing map had completed part of its transformation. It had been promoted from a middle-grade innate treasure to an upper-grade innate treasure. Moreover, more origin power was stored in the Zhoxing map's body. If it was given enough time, it could completely transform into a supreme-grade innate treasure. Originally, Feng Zichen wanted to wait for the Zhoxing map to transform into a supreme-grade innate treasure before taking it out to intimidate everyone. However, plans could not keep up with changes. In order to deal with the two Western saints, he had to take out the Zhoxing map in advance. This time, using the Zhoxing map would probably delay the time for it to be promoted to a supreme-grade innate treasure. Suppress. Anger in his heart made Feng Zichen use all his strength to activate the Zhoxing map and suppress Mount Meru. Rumble. The Zhoxing map slowly unfolded in the air, and turned into a bright starry sky. With unparalleled power, it pressed down on Mount Meru. Whoosh! Under the suppression of the Zhousing map, the defense that the three could not break through finally changed. The Khanate Bodhi tree swayed continuously, as if it could not bear the unimaginable power, and its body gradually bent. The Khanate Tranquil Lotus shook violently, and its petals rustled. Faint cracks appeared as if it was about to break. Go. Seeing this, Haotian and the South Pole Emperor also used their divine powers to support the Zhousing map, further enhancing its power. Under the joint efforts of the three emperors, the Zhousing map's power was pushed to the limit. The starry sky became deeper and brighter, as if a real boundless starry sky had descended. Crack! Crack! Under this mighty force, the Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation finally showed signs of collapsing. The shadows of the Khanate Bodhi tree and the Khanate Tranquil Lotus began to collapse from top to bottom. Oh no! The moment he saw the Zhousing map appear, Zhuan-Ti knew that something was wrong. Sure enough, as soon as the Zhousing map moved, the means that they were proud of were broken. The biggest shortcoming of the Western sect was that they did not have a Khanate supreme treasure. Combine. With a loud shout, Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor transformed into their original forms, a huge lotus and a huge Khanate Bodhi tree. Mount Meru was their painstaking effort, and the foundation of the Western sect. It could not be destroyed by outsiders. Therefore, even if they had to pay a huge price, they had to protect Mount Meru. Rumble. After Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor transformed into their original forms, they directly merged with their dispersing shadows and reconstructed the Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation with their original forms. At this moment, the Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation, which had two saints as the eye of the formation, jumped to the top 3 levels of the primordial world. Its power was unparalleled. Whoosh! A divine light flashed, and the entire Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation looked brand new. An even stronger force spread out and blocked the attack of the Zhousing map. Hiss! Isn't this a little too tragic? At this moment, even as an enemy, Feng Zichen could not help but sympathize with Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor. Since when did saints fall to this point? Using their bodies to replace the Khanate Supreme Treasure as the eye of the formation. This was too undignified. Yes, the bodies of Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor were definitely not weaker than the Khanate Supreme Treasure. In the past, the formation that they had set up as the eye of the formation could definitely block the Zhousing map, or even better. However, in this way, the two of them really lost their dignity as saints. Since they were forced to use their bodies, it meant that the two of them really had no other means. Rumble. Just as the two sides were pulling at each other, the heavenly Tao was finally about to descend. However, at this moment, a vast force suddenly appeared and distorted space and time, isolating the connection between Mount Meru and the primordial world. It was the power of reincarnation. The Lady of Earth had attacked. In the netherworld, she shook the 6 paths of reincarnation disc. With her supreme power, she isolated the connection between Mount Meru and the primordial world to delay the descent of the heavenly Tao. The Lady of Earth and the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God were natural enemies. There was no way to resolve it. It was not strange that she attacked the Western sect. At the same time, in the gap of time and space, powerful Khanate numinous treasures appeared one after another. They released astonishing power and protected the stability of the void together. This was the attack of the great divine abilities to maintain the stability of the void and stop the descent of the heavenly Tao from another angle. This was what it meant to push everyone down. Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor had offended too many people, so everyone hoped that the two of them would be unlucky. Now it was not easy for someone to find trouble with the two of them. How could the great divine abilities that they had offended let this battle end so easily? Naturally, they would think of ways to prolong the battle, so that the two of them would suffer great losses. Haha! Fellow Taoists, you have angered the public. Sensing everything that was happening around him, Feng Zichen could not help but laugh out loud. Then he directly drew the power of the boundless starry sky into his body. In an instant, his realm rose to the 9th heaven of primordial chaos. Kill! Before Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor could react, Feng Zichen, whose strength had greatly increased, directly used his body as a weapon and slammed toward Mount Meru. How strong was Feng Zichen's body? It was not weaker than a Khanate cardinal treasure at all. With the support of the boundless starry sky, the power. Therefore, his collision directly shattered the Khanate mind-calming Bodhi array. With a boom, Feng Zichen directly crashed into the Khanate Bodhi tree, sending it flying high into the air. Its leaves and branches scattered all over the ground. Then, Feng Zichen used the recoil force to crash into the Khanate mind-calming lotus, sending it flying so hard that a few petals fell off. Rumble. The formation ice shifted, and the array was immediately broken. With a roar, Mount Meru, which was decorated with gems, appeared in front of the three of them. Cough cough. In the distance, after Zhuan-Ti and the South Pole Emperor landed, they turned back into their human forms. However, they did not look good. Obviously, they had suffered serious injuries. On the other side, Feng Zichen did not feel good either. The power that was supported by the boundless starry sky was directly repelled and brought him a lot of backlash. However, the result was gratifying. The Khanate mind-calming Bodhi array was broken by him. 1 primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, and 2 half-step primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Fellow Taoists, do you think that you can deal with 2 saints with this strength? Suppressing his injuries, Saint Zhuan-Ti said with an ugly expression. If they really fought, the other party might not be their match. They did not make a move previously mainly because they were worried about Mount Meru. But now Mount Meru could not be saved, so they did not have to worry. It's useless to just talk about it. We have to try before we know. The Khanate mind-calming Bodhi array was broken, and the destruction of Mount Meru was inevitable. The three of them had almost achieved their goal. Even if they were defeated by Zhuan-Ti, they would not lose anything. Therefore, Feng Zichen was very free and easy now. You're courting death. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Saint Zhuan-Ti raised the wonderful 7 treasures tree and brushed it toward the three of them. At the same time, Saint Jia-yin also moved. The divine banner quietly appeared and brushed toward the three of them. Fellow Taoists, I'll deal with Saint Jia-yin. I'll leave Saint Zhuan-Ti to you. After turning his head and saying that, Feng Zichen faced the divine banner and fought with Saint Jia-yin. Behind him, Haotian and the great emperor of the South Pole joined forces and fought with Saint Zhuan-Ti. In such a civil war, saints could not use the power of the heavenly Tao, and the supremes of heaven and earth could not use the power of their ranks. Therefore, they could only rely on their own strength. However, nothing was absolute. The heavenly court had a huge advantage over the Western sect, and that was that their luck was more powerful. It was precisely with the support of the heavenly court's luck that Haotian and Luai's, 2 half-step primordial chaos existences, could fight with Zhuan-Ti, who was at the primordial chaos level. Otherwise, the two of them would have been suppressed and sealed by Saint Zhuan-Ti long ago. Rumble. As the two sides exchanged blows, terrifying shockwaves swept out in all directions, destroying everything in their surroundings. The void collapsed layer by layer, and the rules shattered one after another. Everything no longer existed. The outcome of Mount Meru, which was at the center of the battle, could be imagined. Layer after layer of the mountain disappeared, and very soon, it became much smaller. The innate Tao patterns carved on the mountain did not play any role, and could not stop the destruction of Mount Meru at all. Fortunately, Saint Jia-yin had taken away the disciples living on Mount Meru in advance. Otherwise, the Western sect would have been destroyed again. This battle lasted for 100 years. Because the terrifying aftermath broke through the seal of the Great Medium and affected the untainted world, it was forcibly stopped by the heavenly Tao. When the battle ended, Mount Meru had already turned into ruins. It was even more tragic than before, and only the foundation of the mountain was left. And this was the result of the two Western sages protecting it at all costs. Otherwise, Feng Zichen and the other two would definitely be able to completely erase Mount Meru from the world. Not long after the heavenly Tao took action, Feng Zichen and the other two dragged their injured bodies and left, leaving behind the grieving and indignant Zhuan-Ti. He wanted to cry at the ruins of Mount Meru but had no tears. This should be the third time that Mount Meru was destroyed. First, it was the war between Taoists and demons, then it was the tribulation of the inner demons, and finally this time, The three tribulations, each more ruthless than the last, caused Mount Meru, which was not inferior to Mount Kunlun, to fall to the level of a top-blessed enclave. It was miserable. Mount Meru. It was really a mountain full of disasters. If he wanted to recover this time, he did not know how much it would cost. Taoist Haotian, how do you feel after this battle? After returning to the heavenly court, Feng Zichen asked Haotian. Carefree. Although he was seriously injured, Haotian could not hide his excitement and said, after this battle, not only did he untie the knot in his heart, but he was also one step closer to primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. It could be said that he had gained a lot. It's good that you have gained something. It means that this battle was not in vain. Nodding, Feng Zichen replied. Chapter 7:11. Fighting with a real master of the origin was undoubtedly a great opportunity for Haotian, who was half a step into the origin. This could help him understand the realm of the origin better, and lay a solid foundation for his future breakthroughs. I have to go back to heal, so I won't disturb you. When I recover, I'll come back to talk with you in detail. After chatting with Haotian for a while, Feng Zichen suddenly got up and left. He was not seriously injured. After all, if they really fought, Saint Jiayin might not be his match. However, Haotian and Lei were seriously injured and needed to be healed in time. Otherwise, it might have a little impact on their future. Therefore, Feng Zichen was in a hurry to leave. Not long after Feng Zichen left, Lei also left. Soon, only Haotian was left in the heavenly court. Your Majesty, what should we do with the fake Yaoji and her son? At this time, Yaoqi walked over and asked Haotian softly, find a time to kill them? Haotian frowned and said, yes. Yaoqi nodded and did not object. No matter what the truth was about Yaoji, that person had pretended to be the princess of the heavenly court, and married a mortal, and had a child. It was a fact that had spread throughout the three realms. If the heavenly court did not kill her to correct the heavenly prestige, how could they maintain their dignity? By the way, Yaoqi, I was seriously injured in this battle. I need to recuperate in seclusion for a while. So, during my absence, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the heavenly court. Haotian's face became paler as he spoke. Obviously, that was the power left in his body by Saint Juanti, which was still destroying his body. Your Majesty, go ahead. I'll take care of the heavenly court. I just don't know if your Majesty's injury is serious. Seeing Haotian's pale face, Yaoqi said worriedly. It's okay. It's just a small injury. Smiling at Yaoqi, Haotian disappeared on the spot. He went to the origin of the heaven realm to heal his injuries. After Feng Zichen and Lei left the heaven court, Lei rushed back to the Nine Clouds lightning region to heal himself. After Feng Zichen wandered around the boundless starry sky, he quietly went through the passage of the world tree and rushed to the realm sea. He hadn't been to the realm sea for a long time. This time, he could use the excuse of recuperating to disappear in front of everyone for a while. It had been more than 100,000 years since Feng Zichen returned from the realm sea. As for the realm sea, that was even more formidable. It might have already been several million years, or even several tens of millions of years. The difference in the flow of time between the two was quite big. After so much time had passed, he hurried over to Realm Sea again. It was still the same as before, spacious and desolate, without too many changes. But when Feng Zichen stood in the Realm Sea and carefully sensed it for a while, he discovered that the current Realm Sea was greatly different from before. In his perception, among the countless small and medium worlds floating in the Realm Sea, most of them were connected to him. Even among the 3,000 large worlds standing at the peak of the Realm Sea, there were dozens of large worlds that appeared in his perception. Obviously, these worlds were already under his control, or were in the process of being under his control. And this was all thanks to the 10,000 Worlds trading city. After careful calculation, Feng Zichen discovered that almost 1% of the entire Realm Sea had been taken down by the 10,000 Worlds trading city. It seems that they have spent a lot of effort these years. Looking at the results of the 10,000 Worlds trading city, Feng Zichen said with emotion. Then his figure flashed and came to the outside of time and space, where the 10,000 Worlds trading city was located, in the God realm that was created by him. Compared to before, the God realm didn't change much. Even if the 10,000 Worlds trading city had taken down nearly 1% of the realm sea's territory, it was still the same. Feng Zichen had expected this. And this time he came to solve this problem. Those small and medium worlds were the associated worlds of the greater world. Once they were touched, the will of the greater world would definitely sense it. Therefore, in order not to alert the enemy and to better invade the greater world, the 10,000 Worlds trading city didn't touch those small and medium worlds even though they had been taken down. As for why they didn't integrate the greater world that they had already taken down into the God realm, the reason was even simpler. In every greater world, there was a chaos demon god sleeping, and the 10,000 Worlds trading city wasn't a match for the chaos demon god at all. Therefore, in order to prevent waking up the sleeping chaos demon god, even if the 10,000 Worlds trading city had taken over those worlds, they didn't dare to integrate them into the God realm. Otherwise, once the sleeping chaos demon god woke up, the 10,000 Worlds trading city might be able to survive, but the God realm would definitely be finished. Without enough power, the 10,000 Worlds trading city wouldn't touch the greater world. However, although the 10,000 Worlds trading city didn't have the power to deal with the chaos demon god, Feng Zichen did. He came here to deal with the chaos demon god. Elder Yu, long time no see. In the center of the 10,000 Worlds trading city, Feng Zichen looked at Yu clan who hadn't changed much and said guiltily. The biggest change was that there wasn't any change. After all, the realm sea wasn't as good as the Eldritch world. Otherwise, Yu clan wouldn't have not improved much after such a long time. Your Majesty, why are you here? Seeing Feng Zichen who suddenly appeared in front of him, Yu clan asked curiously. Of course, I'm here to relieve your worries. Suppressing the guilt in his heart, Feng Zichen said. Relieve our worries. Could it be? As if he thought of something, Yu clan couldn't help but look happy. All of you wait here first. Once the chaos demon god falls, immediately pull the greater world that he's in into the God realm. After gathering everyone, Feng Zichen instructed. Then, he left directly and hurried to the greater world. His first target was a greater world called the Primordial World. This world had been completely infiltrated by the 10,000 Worlds trading city. It was only because of the chaos demon god that it didn't integrate into the God realm. What Feng Zichen wanted to do now was to kill the chaos demon god in it to create an opportunity for the 10,000 Worlds trading city. Although there was a boundary set up by the primordial demon god outside the primordial world, the origin of this world had been infiltrated by the 10,000 Worlds trading city. Naturally, the boundary was completely useless. Therefore, Feng Zichen easily entered this realm and found the sleeping place of the primordial fiend celestial without a hitch. After arriving here, Feng Zichen didn't rush to make a move. Instead, he started to draw Dao patterns and set up layers of restrictions in the void. Then, he took out the 10,000 spirit crown and the Zhouxing painting and laid an ambush in the void. After making all the necessary preparations, Feng Zichen took out the Hongmeng Daozhong and violently blasted it at the sleeping primordial demon god. Clang! The power of the Hongmeng Daozhong was first compressed to the limit by Feng Zichen, then suddenly exploded on the primordial demon god. The tremendous power directly sent the primordial demon god flying, and his body disintegrated in midair. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Ah, who is it? The primordial demon god was naturally awakened by this heavy blow, but before he could see the enemy's face clearly, he saw countless stars swirling in front of him and enveloping him. In the void, an ancient scroll appeared, forming a vast starry sky and sucking the primordial demon god in. Clang! The Hongmeng Daozhong trembled again, and entered the Zhouxing painting as well, continuing to attack the primordial demon god. After a while, the bloodied primordial demon god brandished a long spear and charged out of the Zhouxing painting against Hongmeng Daozhong's suppression. It's you. As soon as the primordial demon god exited the Zhouxing painting, he saw Feng Zichen standing in the distance. This time he was furious. Roar! The primordial demon god roared and charged at Feng Zichen with the primordial war spear in his hand. However, as soon as he took a few steps, countless Dao inscriptions burst out around him. Like chains, they pulled him back into the heavenly cycle star map. Kill. This time, not only did Hongmeng Daozhong enter the Zhouxing painting, but Feng Zichen also entered and attacked the primordial demon god together. Roar. After an unknown period of time, the primordial demon god suddenly exploded. He swept Feng Zichen away with his spear and pushed away Hongmeng Daozhong. Once again, he charged out of the Zhouxing painting. However, after this attack, his aura suddenly weakened a lot. Obviously, in order to escape, he paid a heavy price. Go. After escaping this time, the primordial demon god did not charge at Feng Zichen immediately. Instead, he used a secret technique to try to contact the other chaos demon gods. Unfortunately, the results were disappointing. This time, Feng Zichen came prepared. Everything here was isolated by him. It was impossible for the primordial demon god to send a message outside. Bang! While the primordial demon god was sending a message, the 10,000 spirit crown suddenly appeared and smashed on the primordial demon god's head. After being hit, the primordial demon god felt dizzy and could not control his body for a moment. He fell to the ground directly. At this time, the Zhouxing painting opened again and pulled the primordial demon god in. Let's see if you can survive this time. Making up his mind, Feng Zichen took out another Khanate Supreme treasure and blasted it at the primordial demon god. Boom! As the void trembled, a finger that blotted out the sky appeared and pointed at the primordial demon god. It was the human Dao imperial seal. Many years ago, Feng Zichen had taken it back. Today, in order to deal with the primordial demon god, he even used this treasure. After the human Dao imperial seal, Hongmeng Daozhong and the 10,000 spirit crown also released their power and blasted at the primordial demon god. With the power of 4 Khanate Supreme Treasures and Feng Zichen at the 6th firmament of chaos primordial chaos, the primordial chaos demon god had been besieged for hundreds of years and finally killed him. The primordial demon god had fallen. While Hongmeng Daozhong was devouring the primordial demon god's great Dao imprint, Feng Zichen cleaned up the battlefield and checked his spoils of war. A primordial chaos demon god's corpse, a portion of its origin, a damaged primordial chaos spear, and a complete greater thousand world. Not bad at all. These things were almost equivalent to the entire wealth of Zhuanti and Zhuanti. Fortunately, they did not know about the existence of the Realm Sea. Otherwise, their eyes would have turned red, and the primordial chaos demon gods would not have a moment of peace. Unfortunately, they did not know, and neither did the others in the Eldritch Wilderness. The enormous treasury that was the Realm Sea still belonged to Feng Zichen alone. After notifying the myriad realms exchange to pull the primordial world into the divine realm, Feng Zichen turned and walked to the next greater thousand world. In this world he used the same trick again, and killed another primordial chaos demon god. Unfortunately, this primordial chaos demon god did not have a broken primordial chaos treasure. Otherwise he would not have been killed by Feng Zichen so easily. Thinking about it, when the 3,000 primordial chaos demon gods and Pangu fought in the chaos, they could not even save their own lives, let alone the magic treasures in their hands. Naturally, it was shattered beyond recognition. In fact, it was completely destroyed. It should be normal for primordial chaos demon gods to not have magic treasures in their hands. Primordial chaos demon gods who had magic treasures in their hands were different. Thinking about it now, Feng Zichen was really lucky. He only killed a few primordial chaos demon gods, but they all had broken primordial chaos treasures in their hands, which made him rich. However, maybe because he had killed too many primordial chaos demon gods, his good luck seemed to have come to an end. In the following period of time, Feng Zichen killed another 3 primordial chaos demon gods in a row, but they did not drop a single broken primordial chaos treasure. This made him very depressed. After complaining for a while, Feng Zichen continued to rush to the next world, the Grand Celestial World. In this world, even though Feng Zichen was prepared in advance, he was still exposed, and he was once again surrounded by the primordial chaos demon gods. This time he was exposed not because Feng Zichen was not well prepared, but because the primordial chaos demon god was too decisive. The primordial chaos demon god saw that the situation was not good, and he chose to self-destruct, which caught Feng Zichen off guard. If he did not react quickly enough, the Zhousing map would have been destroyed by the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction. Even so, the Zhousing map was severely damaged, and it would take a long time to recover. To be able to protect the Zhousing map was already Feng Zichen's limit. He could no longer seal the ripples caused by the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction. Therefore, after the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction, the terrifying ripples spread, and the entire world sea was shaken. The primordial chaos demon gods who were in deep sleep were naturally awakened. What happened next was much simpler. When the primordial chaos demon gods who woke up saw Feng Zichen, who was at the center of the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction, they immediately understood what happened. When they released their consciousness to sense for a while, they realized that besides the primordial chaos demon god, there were 5 other comrades who had lost their auras. Evidently they were killed by Feng Zichen. In an instant, the primordial chaos demon gods were enraged. This was the second time that they were hunted down. Did the primordial chaos demon gods not care about their dignity? Chapter 7:12. Sensing that the chaos demon gods had awakened, Feng Zichen did not wait for them to attack him, but fled directly to the untainted land. If he did not escape now, when would he escape? Feng Zichen's reaction was fast. Before the chaos demon gods attacked, he had run far away. But unfortunately, he still could not get rid of the chaos demon gods and was chased closely by them. However, it was also thanks to his fast reaction that the chaos demon gods did not form an encirclement. Otherwise, Feng Zichen would not be able to escape even if he wanted to. Whoosh, in the realm sea, a stream of light flashed and disappeared in an instant. It was Feng Zichen's fleeing figure. Behind him were hundreds of chaos demon gods. They formed a vast expanse and were following closely behind him. They looked extremely terrifying. However, Feng Zichen did not panic at all because he was used to it. Anyway, those chaos demon gods could not catch up with him, and were now being played by him. After cultivating in the boundless starry sky for so many years, although Feng Zichen had not developed a way to restrain self-explosion, he had increased his speed again and again to ensure that no one could catch up with him. As long as he was not trapped by these chaos demon gods, and was just being chased, these chaos demon gods would definitely not be able to do anything to Feng Zichen. Feng Zichen, who was wandering around the realm sea with the chaos demon gods, suddenly thought of something. Now that the chaos demon gods had run out to chase him, wouldn't there be no one guarding the great thousand world that they had occupied? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen was about to send a message to the Myriad Realms trading city, so that they could take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to quickly occupy the great thousand world. But immediately, Feng Zichen gave up this idea. It was not that this plan was not good enough, but it was obviously not suitable for him to contact the Myriad Realms trading city at this time. There were hundreds of chaos demon gods behind Feng Zichen. Once he contacted the Myriad Realms trading city at this time, the fluctuation of his mind would be immediately sensed by the chaos demon gods. In that case, wouldn't the Myriad Realms trading city be exposed if the chaos fiend celestial tracked it down? The chaos demon god could not deal with Feng Zichen, but he could deal with the 10,000 Realms trading city. It was conceivable that once the chaos demon celestial detected the existence of the Myriad Realms trading city, Feng Zichen would have to take it away. Otherwise, the city would definitely be torn to pieces by the furious chaos demon gods. Awesome! This method is simply amazing. After going through this method again in his mind, Feng Zichen couldn't help but marvel at his own wisdom. He would lead the chaos demon god away, and then the trading city of the 10,000 realms would devour the greater 1,000 realms while the chaos demon god was away. This plan was perfect. But now was indeed not the time to carry out this plan to avoid alerting the enemy. But next time, when Feng Zichen was fully prepared, that might not be the case. Perhaps he could seize 1/10 of the greater 1,000 realms, or even more through this plan. Taking a deep look at the realm sea, Feng Zichen seemed to see the picture of the realm of gods standing at the top of all the realms. After that he planned to leave. It was meaningless to continue to lead the chaos demon god away, So he might as well return to the untainted land as soon as possible to prepare for the next arrival. As the saying went, the chaos demon god wouldn't be defeated a third time after suffering 2 losses in a row. So he must have some means to deal with him. Therefore, the next time, Feng Zichen would be facing a tough battle, so he naturally had to be fully prepared. Fellow Taoists, please don't chase after him. Looking back at the chaos demon god, Feng Zichen suddenly said. Hearing that, the chaos demon god didn't retreat. Instead, he used a secret method to forcibly increase his speed, and got closer to Feng Zichen. How boring! Shaking his head, Feng Zichen took out a ball of chaos origin chi. Then he threw it back without looking back. That was the origin chi of the chaos demon god that he had killed, and it contained amazing power. After throwing out that ball of chaos origin chi, Feng Zichen ignited his own origin chi to increase his speed to another level. In the blink of an eye, he pulled away from the chaos demon god again. Seeing that, the chaos demon god naturally didn't want to be outdone, so he ignited his origin chi and chased after him. However, just as they approached the origin chi, Feng Zichen spat out a word coldly. Explode. At his command, the massive origin of chaos exploded, and a terrifying power wreaked havoc. The few chaos demon gods who were in the center of the explosion were blown into pieces, and turned into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. As for the chaos demon gods that were far away from the center of the explosion, they were sent flying by the terrifying power, and were more or less injured. Not to mention them, even Feng Zichen, who had already run far away, was affected. He was sent flying by the ripples caused by the explosion of chaos origin chi, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Feng Zichen took advantage of this opportunity to escape successfully. He left the realm sea and returned to the untainted land. Puff! After returning to the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen couldn't suppress his injuries anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his injuries completely broke out. With a puff, countless wounds suddenly appeared on his body, and blood spurted out like a fountain. This time, Feng Zichen's injuries were not light. First of all, when the Tianyuan demon god exploded, in order to protect the Zhouxing map, Feng Zichen could be said to have taken most of the damage from the explosion. Because of this, he suffered a lot of injuries. Then he was chased by the chaos demon god, which further worsened his injuries. Finally, the explosion of the chaos origin chi was not much weaker than the explosion of the chaos demon god. Feng Zichen was seriously injured after being injured by the self-detonation twice, and being chased by the chaos demonic celestial. However, even so, he was not in a hurry to heal his injuries. Instead, he contacted the Youyu clan through a secret method, and asked them to keep a low profile and stop all activities in the trading city of the 10,000 realms. Wasn't it courting death to cause trouble under the eyes of the chaos demon god? After instructing the Youyu clan, Feng Zichen began to heal his injuries in seclusion. At this time, it had only been 100 years since he left the untainted land. When Feng Zichen was in seclusion, at this moment, the disciples of the Clan of Enlightenment gathered on the Kunlun mountain, and were secretly planning a big event that would shake the untainted land. They were going to raid the execution ground. Soon, the heavenly court would publicly kill the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian on the immortal slaying platform to correct the heavenly might. And the 12 golden immortals of the Clan of Enlightenment were going to raid the execution ground, so that they could save the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian. Yang Jian was the second disciple of the heavenly lord of the origin, immortal Yuding's only disciple. As his master, how could immortal Yuding watch his disciple be killed by the heavenly court? Therefore, he wanted to save them. Saving one was saving two was also saving. Therefore, immortal Yuding planned to save both the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian. However, there was a problem at this time. He, immortal Yuding, did not have the ability to save people from the heavenly court. That was awkward. However, it did not matter. He could not, but he still had his fellow disciples. If they worked together, they would be able to come up with a perfect solution. After making up his mind, immortal Yuding directly called his fellow disciples to his cave residence. Fellow disciples, I believe you have heard about Yang Jian. He will be dragged to the immortal slaying platform in a few days. Poor Wei is incompetent and can't save him from the hands of the heavenly court. Therefore, I shamelessly invited everyone here today. I hope you can help me come up with an idea to save poor Wei's poor disciple." Seeing that everyone had arrived, Immortal Yu Ding said with a face full of shame. No one was surprised by this. Before coming, everyone had already guessed why Immortal Yu Ding had invited them here. However, they did not have a good idea on how to save Yang Jian. This junior brother, in my opinion, we might as well go directly to the heavenly court and ask for him. I think, with our status as disciples of the saints, the heavenly court will not disrespect us. Perhaps they will release martial nephew Yang Jian on the spot. After thinking for a while, Guangqingzi, who was the eldest senior brother of the clan of enlightenment, said, "In the past, when Haoyan was determined to give in, there was naturally no problem with his method. But now, Haoyan's attitude had changed drastically. If the disciples of the clan of enlightenment were to follow Guangqingzi's method, they would go to the heavenly court to ask for him. It would be good if the heavenly court did not capture them together, let alone release them." Fortunately, there were still some intelligent disciples of the clan of enlightenment who stopped Guangqingzi's plan. "That's not appropriate. This method is not appropriate." Just as Guangqingzi finished speaking, Immortal Yu Ding directly objected. He had personally experienced the change in the heavenly court's attitude. "What's wrong?" Guangqingzi was not angry when he heard his method being objected to. He only asked in confusion. He had just come out of seclusion and did not know the changes in the heavenly court. He was completely following the previous method. Otherwise, he would not have come up with such a stupid plan. "Eldest senior brother, you might not know, but the current heavenly court is completely different from before. It suddenly became incomparably tough, and did not give us any face at all. Take the previous example. I wanted to save Yang Jian and his mother, when the heavenly soldiers captured him. However, before I could make a move, the great Luo Holy Venerate in the heavenly court looked at me from afar. At that moment, I felt the threat of death. It seemed that as long as I dared to save Yang Jian, the Daoyuo Taoist priests would kill me without hesitation." Recalling the scene that day, Immortal Yu Ding still had some lingering fear. This was the first time everyone had heard of this matter. At this moment, they could not help but be shocked. The heavenly court was indeed different from before. From what junior brother said, the poor Wei's method just now really won't work. Guangqingzi shook his head and said. Following that, everyone began to discuss amongst themselves. However, after discussing for a long time, no one could come up with a feasible method. The only way now is to raid the execution ground. Seeing that everyone had discussed for a long time, and still could not come up with a feasible plan, Immortal Yu Ding gritted his teeth and said, "Raid the execution ground?" Hearing this, everyone asked with some uncertainty. Yes, raid the execution ground. If we combine our strength, we can definitely rescue Yang Jian and his mother from the demon execution stage. Immortal Yu Ding nodded and repeated, "That's also a way." After thinking carefully, everyone could not help but nod. This was indeed a feasible method. The 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect may not be very strong individually, but if the 12 of them joined forces, they could even fight the real Daoyuo Taoist priests. In addition, with the magic treasures given to them by the primeval Lord of Heaven, they had the ability to protect themselves even in the face of a sage-to-be expert. Therefore, if they joined forces, it would not be difficult to rescue Yang Jian and his mother from the heavenly court. As for how to deal with the aftermath after rescuing Yang Jian and his mother, it would be even simpler. What, does the heavenly court dare to go to Kunlun Mountain and ask for them? Okay, let's do it. After making up their minds, everyone nodded and said. At this time, the disciples of the Chan sect had not yet fallen out with each other, and were on good terms. Naturally, they were willing to share the worries and difficulties of their senior brothers. It was far from being like the later generations, where they all left Kunlun Mountain and passed down their orthodoxies. Poor Wei, on behalf of my inferior disciple, Yang Jian, thank you all. Seeing that everyone nodded without hesitation, Immortal Yu Ding was very touched and could not help but bow to everyone. We're all family. Senior brother, why are you so polite to us? Seeing this, Immortal Tai hurriedly stepped forward and supported Immortal Yu Ding, not letting him bow down. The other disciples of the Chan sect also nodded in agreement. In this way, the matter of raiding the execution ground to save Yang Jian was settled. In fact, there was a better and faster way to save Yang Jian and his mother besides raiding the execution ground. That was, Immortal Yu Ding went to see the primeval Lord of Heaven and begged him to save Yang Jian. There was no need for the primeval Lord of Heaven to do anything. He only needed to write a letter to Haotian and soften his words, asking Haotian to give him face and let Yang Jian go. In this case, would Haotian disrespect the primeval Lord of Heaven for Yang Jian? Of course, after locking Yang Jian up for a period of time, he would find an excuse to let him go. However, none of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect said such a simple method. Did they not think of it? No, they would have thought of such a simple method. Since they had thought of it, why didn't they say it? Of course, it was for the sake of that ridiculous face. If the primeval Lord of Heaven asked Haotian for Yang Jian, it would undoubtedly make the primeval Lord of Heaven lose face in front of Haotian. Therefore, even if they went to the execution ground, the disciples of the Chan sect would not let the primeval Lord of Heaven appear. The face of the Chan sect was very precious. Time flew by. Soon, the day of the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian's execution came. On this day, the two gods of war led the elites of the Thunder region, and personally escorted the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian to the immortal slaying platform outside the Southern Heaven Gate. The monster slaying platform was located not far from the Southern Heaven Gate. As for why the monster slaying platform was set up here, the purpose was naturally to warn all living beings. Chapter 7:13. The execution took place outside the South Heaven Gate. Anyone with a bit of cultivation in the three realms could clearly see the scene of the execution. The fear in the hearts of all living beings naturally served as a warning. However, although setting up the immortal slaying platform outside the Southern Heavenly Gate could warn all living beings, it also gave some people an opportunity. For example, robbing the execution ground outside the Southern Heavenly Gate was considered to be out of the Heavenly Court. It was naturally much more convenient to make a move here than in the Heavenly Court. Why do you think those Chan sect disciples were so confident in robbing the execution ground and saving Yang Jian and his mother? It was because the immortal slaying platform was outside the Southern Heavenly Gate. Once they succeeded, they could directly escape into the Eldritch Wilderness. It was very convenient. If the immortal slaying platform was in the Heavenly Court, they would have to think carefully about whether to rob the execution ground. Because in the Heavenly Court, even if they successfully rescued Yang Jian and his mother, it would not be easy for them to escape. There was a high chance that they would be suppressed by the Heavenly Court. Kneel. After pulling Yang Jian onto the immortal slaying platform, the heavenly soldier pressed down hard and forced him to kneel on the ground. Then there was a long wait. The Heavenly Court did not need to choose a good time to kill people, but since they wanted to warn all living beings, they had to choose a time when there were many people to maximize their goal. The waiting now was just to give the living beings of the three realms time to react, so that they would look over. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed, and a month had passed in the mortal realm. Execute. As the executioners, the North and South war gods felt that most people had noticed this place, so they ordered the execution. With the order, streaks of blood-red light rose from the immortal slaying platform. Then, endless blood-red light gathered and turned into a blood-red sword that slashed at Yang Jian's head. At that moment, a large array suddenly covered the entire immortal slaying platform in the void. Just as Yang Jian was about to die, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect finally made their move. In the array, wind and lightning appeared together, and flames intertwined, bursting out with great power and shattering the blood-red sword formed by the immortal slaying platform. You thieves really came. Our preparations were not in vain. Seeing that someone had come to rob the execution ground, the North and South war gods were not surprised. They immediately activated the backup plan they had prepared in advance. It was clear that they had already planned for someone to come to the execution ground. No matter what, Yang Jian was a third-generation disciple of the Chan school. How could the Chan school let him be killed by the heavenly court so easily? Naturally, they had to save him. On the other hand, the second-generation disciples of the Chan school were famous for being bold and unscrupulous. They were completely capable of robbing the execution ground. Since they had a guess in their hearts, the heavenly courts naturally had to make arrangements early, so as to avoid being robbed of the execution ground and losing face in front of all the living beings in the 3 dimensions. Kill. Not long after the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school attacked, a large number of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals suddenly rushed out from the South Heaven Gate and surrounded the immortal slaying platform. There were more than 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. 100,000 celestial soldiers and celestial generals. This time, in order to deal with the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, the heavenly courts had sent out 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. They were all elites among elites. Don't underestimate these 100,000 celestial soldiers and celestial generals. The current celestial heavens was no longer the celestial heavens of the journey to the west. These heavenly soldiers were selected from the Khanate races that lived in the heavenly realm. Each of them was a relatively outstanding disciple of their race. Among them, the weakest was at the golden immortal realm. As for the heavenly generals, they were at the Tai Jingxian realm. Their commander, like the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, was Daoyuo Jingxian. When these 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals worked together with the Khanate formation that the heavenly courts had specially prepared for them, their power could even temporarily trap a quasi-saint mighty figure. Even the Daoyuo Taoist priests would not be able to escape the fate of being suppressed if they fell into it. Not to mention the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. It could be said that the heavenly courts had put in a lot of effort to deal with the 12 golden immortals of Chan school this time. Activate the formation kill. As if they had practiced countless times, the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals had just formed an encirclement when they directly formed a formation and charged toward the 12 golden immortals of Chan school on the immortal slaying platform. Rumble. The soaring aura of the weapons erupted and swept everything, directly shattering the formation set up by the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. However, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school were disciples of the saints after all, and they were also Khanate god fiends. Naturally, they would not be so easily killed by the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Primeval formation activate. The moment the formation shattered, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school moved and formed another Khanate formation, the primeval formation. Although this formation was named after primeval, it was jointly created by the 3 Pure Ones. This was the formation that the 3 Pure Ones had specially created for the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. Not only could the primeval formation maximize the power of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, but it could also condense an incarnation of the primeval Lord of Heaven, thereby displaying part of his power. The reason why the 12 golden immortals of Chan school were so confident was because of that supreme array formation. Once the incarnation of the primeval Lord of Heaven appeared, how many people in the Eldritch world could compete with it? Rumble. Once the primeval formation was formed, a supreme power immediately spread out. Then, a supreme phantom slowly appeared in front of everyone. Boom. In an instant, an indescribable power attacked everyone's hearts, causing their minds to tremble. The heavenly court's formation immediately showed signs of instability. How dare you be so impudent? Do you really think that there's no one in the heavenly court? At this critical moment, 10 tall figures suddenly rushed out from the North Star heavenly palace that had long fallen into silence. Violent auras surged around them. They were Emperor North Star's guards. At the same time, they were also experts of the human race. Emperor North Star was a god, the sovereign of a race, and the ancestor of a Tao. How could he not have people under him? In fact, Emperor North Star had the most subordinates among the heavenly court's great emperors. At the same time, he was also the strongest. As the Tao ancestor of the celestial and demon Tao, if the cultivators of the celestial and demon Tao joined the heavenly court, they would naturally be under his name. Apart from being the celestial and demon Tao ancestor, he was also the lord of the Khanate sword Tao. Therefore, the sword Tao cultivators would naturally be his subordinates. Apart from that, Emperor Northstar was also the sage emperor of the human race. Therefore, the power of the human race in the heavenly court naturally belonged to him. During the era of the 5 heavenly emperors, the heavenly court was filled with human experts. After the 5 heavenly emperors abdicated, they naturally couldn't bring all the human experts with them. Therefore, these human experts naturally became the subordinates of Emperor Northstar. Emperor Northstar, who controlled so much power, was the most powerful person in the heavenly court. However, although Emperor Northstar had great power, his subordinates gradually quieted down after his death. They didn't interact with outsiders and silently waited for their majesty to return. As he hadn't shown himself for a long time, many people neglected this power. This time, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect didn't consider this power when they attacked. That was because they hadn't shown themselves for too long. However, they forgot that they were different from others. They were the disciples of the primordial heavenly lord. Emperor Northstar had died in the hands of the primordial heavenly lord. In other words, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect had a grudge with Emperor Northstar's subordinates. Moreover, it was a deadly grudge. How could Emperor Northstar's subordinates not react when they saw their enemies flaunting their power in front of them? Immediately, 10 people rushed out. These 10 people all cultivated the Tao of celestial demons. Moreover, each of them had reached the realm of Tao Lord Tai. Tao Lord Tai. He was Tai Jingxian, who cultivated the Tao of Khanate. Although he was called Tai Jingxian, his power wasn't any weaker than Tao Yuo Jingxian. In fact, he was even stronger. Hehe. The primordial array. Not bad. I wonder if it's better than the primordial array of the human race? When the 10 human experts arrived in front of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, they didn't waste any time and directly used the strongest array of the human race, the primordial array. At the end of the primordial era, when the demon race was massacring the humans, the sage emperor of the human race, Feng Zichen, set up the primordial array and fought against the Eastern Emperor Tai without losing. This made the array famous. It became a supreme array that was comparable to the heavenly cycle star array, and was ranked as one of the 3 great array formations of the primordial world. Yes, there were 4 of the 3 great array formations of the primordial world. There was nothing wrong with that. In fact, the primordial array was naturally inferior to the primordial array. However, the conditions for setting up the primordial array were too harsh. It required 10 Khanate numinous treasures of the corresponding attributes. With the strength of these human experts, they probably couldn't find them. Therefore, they could only use other Dharma treasures to replace them. However, this way, it was hard to say how much power the primordial array could unleash. However, no matter how weak it was, it couldn't defeat the primordial array. Could it not be on par with it? Rumble. As the 10 people moved, 10 postnatal cardinal treasures of different attributes slowly appeared. Immediately, all kinds of great Tao interweaved in the world. It started from the first origin, went through yin, yang, heaven and earth, and ended in the 10 directions. Boom. In the end, the great Tao interweaved into a huge great Tao divine diagram that lay between heaven and earth, emitting shocking waves. The primordial array, infinitely weakened, was completed. Primordial array rise. Seeing the great Tao divine diagram appear, the 10 experts walked into the diagram without hesitation, and became one with the array. Boom. The divine diagram of the great path shook, and a vast aura spread out. An indescribably noble figure slowly appeared. The incarnation of the heavenly Tao, the supreme achievement of the primordial array in the primordial world. However, compared to the incarnation of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning condensed by the primordial array, the incarnation of the heavenly Tao was undoubtedly more blurry. One could barely see its shape. Obviously, this was caused by the 10 experts' lack of strength and Dharma treasures. However, even so, the power of the incarnation of the heavenly Tao was not weaker than the incarnation of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning. After all, the strength of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning was not inferior to the heavenly Tao. If the incarnations of the two were on the same level, how could the incarnation of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning be a match for the incarnation of the heavenly Tao? The 10 of them stepped forward and used the primordial array to block the primordial array of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. They fought on the immortal slaying platform. At this moment, the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals regained their footing. They formed the heavenly court array again and charged towards the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. When the two sides worked together, the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were immediately defeated. Even if they used connate numinous treasures, it would be difficult to reverse the situation. At that moment, the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were in danger. Master, Uncle Master, leave quickly. The heavenly court wants to kill me. It has nothing to do with you. If Master and Uncle Masters are implicated because of me, how can Yang Jian live in this world? Seeing that the situation was not right, Yang Jian hurriedly said. In order to save his mother, Yang Jian did not hesitate to offend the heavenly court. It could be seen that he was a filial person, and filial people would not have bad temperaments. How could such a person be willing to see his teachers be implicated by him and attract a fatal disaster? Therefore, seeing that the situation was not right, Yang Jian immediately let the 12 golden immortals of Chan School leave. At the end of the day, Yang Jian was also a pitiful person. His parents might be guilty, but he was definitely innocent. However, being born in such a family was the greatest mistake. Yang Jian's idea was good, but he had overestimated the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. Based on the current situation, they did not have the final say if they wanted to leave. It would depend on whether the heavenly court was willing to let them go. The 12 golden immortals of Chan School were already trapped by the heavenly court. If not for the power of the primeval array, they would have been taken down by the heavenly court. Rumble. The battle continued. The heavenly court had the home advantage. The more they fought, the braver they became. On the other hand, the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were gradually unable to hold on. Moreover, there was still an endless stream of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals surging out from the South Heaven Gate. They filled the heavenly court's array to increase its power. It was as if they would not stop until they took down the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. The heavenly court's array was an array formation that Fuxi had personally created when he was the heavenly emperor. One could imagine its power. The greatest advantage of this array was that the more people there were, the more powerful it was. If 1,000,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were to attack together, even a quasi-sage could be suppressed. Now the heavenly court had mobilized more than 150,000 troops, and there were more heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals on the way to support. In the face of such a powerful force, the defeat of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School was only a matter of time. Zai, you're already so old. Don't you know how to make others worry? Seeing that the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were about to be suppressed by the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, the deputy sect master of Chan School, Taoist Randang, finally could not sit still in the Jade Void Palace of Kunlun Mountain. He sighed and was about to save them. To be honest, Taoist Randang did not want to make a move. If he made a move, he would definitely offend Hao Tian and the others. He would definitely suffer a calamity in the future. However, if he did not make a move, the Heavenly Lord of Primeval Beginning would not let him have an easy time now. After weighing the pros and cons, the fear of the Heavenly Lord of Primeval Beginning prevailed. Taoist Randang chose to save them. Rumble. As the void trembled, an ancient ruler quietly arrived and pressed down on the immortal slaying platform. It was the superior grade connate spirit treasure, the Qian ruler. It was one of Taoist Randang's natal spirit treasures, and was extremely powerful. When the Qian Kuan ruler pressed down, it was as if a vast Qian Kuan world was pressing down, bringing great pressure to everyone on the immortal slaying platform. Chapter 7:14. Rumble. The universe was in turmoil as a supreme force attacked. Be it the Chaos Array Formation or the Heavenly Court Array Formation, they immediately showed signs of instability. Retreat. Taoist Randang stretched out his hand and pointed. The cosmic ruler trembled slightly and immediately shook off the endless heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, revealing the 12 golden immortals of Chan School, who were trapped inside. Let's go. Not daring to delay, Taoist Randang activated the cosmic ruler and emitted an immortal light. It swept up the 12 golden immortals of Chan school and was about to take them away. However, go? Where are you going? A huge hand that covered the sky suddenly reached out from the Gauchan heavenly palace and slapped the cosmic ruler fiercely. Boom, boom, boom. After receiving this blow, the cosmic ruler was sent flying. The 12 golden immortals of Chan school, who were swept away by it, fell from it. Daoyuo Taoist priests. In the Jade Void Palace, Taoist Randang's pupils suddenly constricted. He sensed the strength of the person who attacked. Only the Daoyuo Taoist priests could send the cosmic ruler flying with one strike. Moreover, he was not an ordinary Daoyuo Taoist priests. The person who attacked was called Yin Hua. He was one of the top existences under the North Star Emperor. He was a top expert of the God Fiend Dao. His strength had long reached the level of the Daoyuo Taoist priests, which was the same realm as Taoist Randang. That's right. Although Taoist Randang was one of the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, his realm was far from being comparable to his fellow disciples. Taoist Randang had not even stepped into the Sage-to-Be realm, let alone a great divine ability. The Tao ancestors' preaching had ended for an eon, but he was still the Daoyuo Taoist priests. His strength had not improved at all. Taoist Randang could be said to be the weakest existence among the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace who were still alive. Taoist Randang was about to become the shame of the celestial sect of wonders. Ignorant junior. How dare you be so rash? Taoist Randang felt that he had lost face after his weapon was sent flying by a junior. He snorted coldly and raised the cosmic ruler to attack Yin Hua, who had just flown out of the Gauchan heavenly palace. Seeing this, Yin Hua hurriedly took out a long halberd and waved it to meet the universal ruler. With a bang, the halberd and the universal ruler collided in midair, bursting out. The shocking shockwave shattered the surrounding void. Then Yin Hua, together with the long halberd, flew back at a speed faster than when he came. However, the cosmic ruler did not move at all. After one strike, the difference in strength was obvious. Yin Hua was no match for Taoist Randang, and was sent flying by the cosmic ruler. Go. After casually defeating Yin Hua, Taoist Randang did not mind. He used the cosmic ruler to sweep up the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, and was about to bring them out of the heavenly courts. But at this moment, another unforeseen event occurred. A horsetail whisk swept over from the distance, turning into thousands of divine chains that swept towards the ruler of the universe. It was the Khanate star god, Taibai Jinxing. The horsetail whisk in his hand was called the Taibai horsetail whisk. It was his lifelong numinous treasure. It was nurtured by the Khanate Gung metal origin, and contained 36 Khanate divine restrictions. It was a superior grade Khanate numinous treasure. The Taibai horsetail whisk looked like a horsetail whisk, but it was actually a Khanate divine sword with astonishing power. The Khanate Gung metal chi was the killing aura of the world. Its power was boundless and incomparably sharp. The Taibai horsetail whisk was formed by this chi, so its power could be imagined. It was a top-notch killing treasure in the world. Swoosh as the horsetail whisk was waved. Thousands of silver threads danced like sharp divine swords. They carried a cold sword intent as they slashed at the cosmic ruler, wanting to keep it behind. Another Daoyuo Taoist priests? There are really many experts in the heavenly courts. Taoist Randang was not surprised to see another Daoyuo Taoist priests appear. If the heavenly courts only had so few people, they would not be qualified to command the primordial world. With a thought, Taoist Randang controlled the cosmic ruler. He messed up the universe and shook the universe, sweeping away the thousands of silver threads that swept over. Taibai Jinxing's attack was ruthless. It could be said that he had used all his strength. However, in front of Taoist Randang, he still could not cause any waves. He was easily repelled by him. Your strength as a Khanate star god is not bad, but you still can't compare to the poor way. As he spoke, Taoist Randang spun the cosmic ruler and stirred up the boundless universe, causing the universe to tremble and sending Taibai Jinxing flying. With a flip of his hand, Taibai Jinxing was defeated. It would be a mistake to underestimate Taoist Randang, because he could not break through to the quasi-saint realm. After all, he was one of the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. He did not lack opportunities and talent. The reason why he could not break through was that his opportunity had not arrived. Because his opportunity had not arrived and he could not step into the quasi-saint realm, Taoist Randang had stayed in the realm of Daoyuo Jingxian for countless years. If it were anyone else who could not break through, they would have given up long ago. However, Taoist Randang was different. He had never been discouraged, and had never given up the opportunity to break through. For this reason, he did not hesitate to give up his face and worship the heavenly Lord Yuanshi as his master. Although Taoist Randang's series of efforts did not allow him to successfully step into the quasi-saint realm, it allowed him to lay an unparalleled foundation in the realm of Daoyuo Taoist priests. To put it bluntly, in the realm of Daoyuo Taoist priests, there were not many who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Taoist Randang. Even if he could not be invincible in the Daoyuo realm, he was still one of the top existences. Even ordinary quasi-saint almighties might not be a match for him. After all, in the untainted world, Taoist Randang had been staying in the realm of Daoyuo Taoist priests. He was the only one who could not break through. This caused him to be far more powerful than others. How could existences like Yinhua and Taibai Jingxing, who had just entered the realm of Daoyuo Taoist priests, be a match for a wily old fox like Taoist Randang? Even if there were a few more of them, the gap was too big. Taoist Randang could easily defeat them. Kill. After Taibai Jingxing's defeat, the Heavenly Court finally realized that it was difficult for them to fight against Taoist Randang alone. Therefore, almost at the same time, a terrifying aura rose from the Heavenly Palace of Haotian, the North Star, the South Pole, and the Ziwei Heavenly Palace. Then, four Daoyuo Taoist priests appeared and attacked Taoist Randang. At the same time, Yunhua and Taibai Jingxing also climbed up from the void and attacked Taoist Randang together with the four Daoyuo Taoist priests. At this moment, in order to deal with Taoist Randang, the deputy hierarch of the Chan school, the Heavenly Court sent out a total of 6 Daoyuo Taoist priests. Among these 6 people, 2 were from the Ziwei Heavenly Palace, 2 were from the North Star Heavenly Palace, 1 was from the Luai's Heavenly Palace, and 1 was from the Haotian Heavenly Palace. The 6 Daoyuo Taoist priests were already a very strong force in the postnatal era, when all the Dharma had withered. At this moment, the Heavenly Court sent out 6 Daoyuo Taoist priests, which really shocked the world. No one would think that these 6 Daoyuo Taoist priests were all the Daoyuo Taoist priests of the Heavenly Court. Since the Heavenly Court dared to send out 6 of them, it meant that there were more Daoyuo Taoist priests hidden in the Heavenly Court. At this moment, under the pressure of the Chan school, the hidden strength of the Heavenly Court finally revealed a corner of the ice peak. At the same time, it also showed its fangs to the world. Even if they couldn't defeat Taoist Randang with 6 against 1, it was more than enough to hold him back. Damn it! In a moment of carelessness, Taoist Randang was swept by the Taibai horsetail whisk and couldn't help but stagger. Although this attack did not cause him any harm, it caused him to lose his guard for a moment. Everyone seized the opportunity to attack the universal ruler, and beat the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school back into the encirclement of the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Oh no! When Taoist Randang saw this, he knew that something was wrong and wanted to save them. However, the 6 of them had finally forced out the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school. How could they let him save them so easily? Therefore, just as Taoist Randang was about to attack, the attacks of the 6 of them immediately became intense. That reckless aura forced Taoist Randang to give up on saving them and focus on defense. Kill. Knowing that this was a rare opportunity, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals immediately perked up and surrounded the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school with all their might, intending to take them down in the shortest time possible. For a moment, the battle became more and more urgent. It was as if the entire heavenly court had become a battlefield. Where was the Jade Pool? This was the only great mystical ability user in the heavenly court. She had not appeared since the start of the battle, as if she did not care about this matter at all. Strange. Exceptionally strange. Why couldn't the Jade Pool attack? Because she was in big trouble. At this moment, in the Jade Pool, the Heavenly Empress Jade Pool was blocked at the door of her house. It was a Taoist priest in a Taoist robe. He had a kind face and held a worn-out horsetail whisk in his hand. He stood quietly outside the jade pool, without a trace of aura bursting out of his body. Even so, the jade pool looked as if she was facing a great enemy. Her whole body was tense as she stared at the Taoist priest in front of her, not daring to move at all. Since returning from the tribulation with Haotian, the jade pool's strength had improved greatly. Although it was not as exaggerated as Haotian, who had directly stepped into the half-step primordial chaos realm. She had also stepped into the realm of sage to be perfection. She could be called a top-grade mystical ability user. However, the jade pool with such strength showed an expression of defeat in front of the Taoist priest who looked like a mortal in front of her. From this, it could be seen that the Taoist priest was very powerful. He was definitely a half-step primordial chaos realm existence, or even stronger. After a moment of silence, the jade pool asked, "Fellow Taoist, where did you come from and what do you want?" Where did this master in front of her come from? Judging by his clothes, he was obviously a member of the Xian sect. However, after thinking for a long time in her heart, she could not recognize the origin of this Taoist priest. She could not help but feel surprised. After all, there was no one in the Xian sect that the jade pool did not know. The fact that she could not recognize him was enough to show how mysterious this person was. In the past, when the 3,000 mortal guests went to the Purple Cloud Palace to listen to the Tao, it was Haotian and the Jade Pool who stood guard outside the door. Therefore, as long as someone entered the Purple Cloud Palace, they must meet Haotian and the Jade Pool face to face. Therefore, the two of them remembered all the 3,000 mortal guests. Therefore, the Jade Pool could be sure that there was no such person in the Xian sect. Porway Bodhi from the west. Today, I came here to settle a karma here. The Taoist priest smiled and replied. Bodhi. Hearing this, the Jade Pool's pupils shrank. She had already understood the origin of the person in front of her, and knew that today's matter could not be settled peacefully. In the entire West, there were only two great mystical ability users, Jian and Juanti. The Taoist priest in front of her was called Bodhi, so his origin was very obvious. He was Saint Juanti, or rather his good corpse. How does fellow Taoist Bodhi want to settle the karma? Taking a deep breath, the Jade Pool asked very cautiously. At the same time, she was ready to fight. What kind of karma could Taoist Juanti come here for? It was nothing more than the matter of the three emperors of the heavenly court trampling on the western sacred ground. Mount Meru. The mountain gate was destroyed, and the foundation was destroyed. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to take this lying down. It was normal for Saint Juanti to come to take revenge on the heavenly court. Fellow Taoist, please don't worry. Poor Wei came here today not for the matter of Mount Meru, but for the poor disciple of Poor Wei. Seeing that the Jade Pool was a little nervous, Taoist Bodhi explained with a smile. The destruction of Mount Meru was caused by the three great emperors, Haotian, Ziwei, and Gaochen. Although Taoist Juanti was a little shameless, he would not blame the Jade Pool for this matter. On the one hand, he could not afford to lose face, but the pride in his heart did not allow him to do so. Since he wanted to take revenge, then every injustice had its perpetrator, and every debt had its debtor. There was no need to look for other people's family members. If this spread out, wouldn't it mean that Saint Juanti was afraid of Haotian? It did not matter if he was afraid of Tai. After all, everyone was afraid of him, and Saint Juanti was not the only one. Therefore, he had no pressure to use the 10 golden crows to deal with Tai. If he was afraid of Haotian, Juanti really could not afford to lose face. Therefore, Juanti would not attack the Jade Pool. He did not come for the destruction of Mount Meru, but for the fake Yaoji. For some reason, the fake Yaoji's identity had been completely exposed. Everyone knew that she was from the Western sect. For this reason, when the heavenly court wanted to kill her, Saint Juanti had to save her. Otherwise, if the Western sect watched its disciple be killed by outsiders, the cohesion of the Western sect would be scattered. A sect that could not even protect its own disciple. Even if it was the orthodoxy of a saint, no one would join it. Therefore, no matter what, Juanti had to save the fake Yaoji. With his identity, It was not appropriate for him to come to the heavenly court in person. For this reason, he specially sent his good corpse, Taoist Bodhi, to deal with this matter. Even if the 3 corpses of a saint were not as strong as the original body, they were still the top existences in the world, second only to the saints. There were not many people in the primordial world who could defeat them. The Jade Pool was not an exception. Therefore, Taoist Bodhi alone was enough to save the fake Yaoji, Yangjian and her son. In fact, Taoist Bodhi did not need to do anything. He only needed to stop the Jade Pool. He did not need to worry about the rest. The Chan sect would naturally do it for him and bring her out intact. It was precisely because Taoist Bodhi was blocking the way that the Jade Pool had not shown up since the battle. It was not that she was unwilling, but that she could not. Without the help of Taoist Randang, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect gradually lost to the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Soon, they were forced into a desperate situation. Sigh. At the critical moment of the battle, a sudden sigh attracted everyone's attention. Then, a Taoist wearing a feather robe and a star crown appeared in the field, ignoring all the arrays. Chapter 7:15. It's time for this farce to end. No one knew where that Taoist came from, but his tone was frightening. He called the matter of the 12 golden immortals of Chan's school a farce and threatened to resolve it. Kill. At that moment, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were already in a frenzy. When they saw someone interfering in the battle, they did not ask about his background and directly charged forward. From the looks of it, it was obvious that they wanted to kill that Taoist and the 12 golden immortals of Chan school together. Shut up. When the Taoist saw the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals charging over, he could not help but frown. A displeased expression appeared on his face. Then he waved his hand impatiently. Boom. Immediately, a vast aura rose from his body and spread out in all directions with him as the center. Clang. 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 The sound of weapons falling could be heard. It was the group of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals who could not withstand this aura. Their bodies trembled nonstop, so much so that they could not hold the weapons in their hands firmly and fell to the ground. Those who could not perform well even prostrated on the ground, as if they were worshipping a supreme god. Master. In a trance, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school seemed to see the shadow of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning on that Taoist, and could not help but shout. Hiss! The heavenly lord of primordial beginning. At the side, the 6 Daoyuo Taoist priests who were fighting with Taoist Randang could not help but gasp in shock when they heard the words of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. That person is the heavenly lord of primordial beginning? It can't be. For such a small matter, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, who is an extremely prideful saint, actually personally took action? It shouldn't be, right? In addition, it was not that they had never seen the portrait of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Although this person's appearance was somewhat similar to the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, he was obviously not the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. However, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school could not possibly mistake their own master. The 6 Taoist priests who were frightened by the shouts of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school no longer had the intention to fight with Taoist Randang. After fighting him head-on, they retreated to the side. May I ask where you are from, and why are you here? Tai Bai Jinxing tidied up his clothes that were slightly messy due to the continuous battles. He took a step forward and asked the Taoist. Poor Wei Taoist Yuqing came from Kunlun Mountain's Jade Mirage Palace. Today, I am here to bring those unfilial disciples home. The Taoist chuckled and told him his origin. Taoist Yuqing. Everyone was shocked when they heard this name. The person who came was indeed Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. Although he didn't know why his appearance changed, he thought that no one in the untainted land dared to use the name of Taoist Yuqing except for Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. Not to mention impersonating him. If he pretended to be a saint, wouldn't that be suicide? Fellow Taoist Yuqing, you sure are impressive. Coming to the heavenly court to show off, do you really think the heavenly court is your Kunlun Mountain? At this time, Yao Qi finally showed herself and walked out of the Jade Lake. He had to show up. At this time, in the heavenly court, except for him, no one could talk to Taoist Yu Qing. The others didn't have enough status. And Bodhi Taoist didn't stop him because there was no need to. The Jade Lake was already unable to deal with Taoist Bodhi, let alone Taoist Yu Qing, who was even stronger. If the two of them worked together, they could even fight Hao Yin. Porway greets fellow Taoist Yao Qi. Seeing Yao Qi come, Taoist Yu Qing stepped forward and bowed. If Heavenly Lord Yuanshi was here, he naturally wouldn't take Yao Qi seriously. But the current Taoist Yu Qing wasn't the real Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, but an existence like Bodhi Taoist, a good corpse that was cut off for Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. Fellow Taoist, I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to take away the disciples today. Your disciples tried to kidnap the prisoners of the heavenly court in broad daylight, and injured countless heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. This is equivalent to humiliating the heavenly court in front of all living beings in the three realms. If you don't give the heavenly court an explanation today, you won't be able to take this disciple away. Yao Qi said bluntly to Taoist Yu Qing. The dissatisfaction in her words could be felt even through the screen. It's just a joke between the younger generation. Why do you have to take it to heart, fellow Taoist Yao Qi? Taoist Yu Qing said lightly in the face of the angry Yao Qi, looking at his expression. It wasn't that he didn't realize the impact of this matter on the heavenly court, but that he didn't take the heavenly court seriously at all. Yao Qi was furious. She pointed at Taoist Yu Qing and couldn't say anything. After a long time, she calmed down. Goddess, if Taoist Yu Qing wants to take away the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, then let him take them away. On the contrary, even if we really capture the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, we can't do anything to them. After seeing Yao Qi calm down, Taibai Jingxing stepped forward and whispered. In fact, letting the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect leave was the best choice for the heavenly court. Otherwise, what could they do even if they captured them? Could they kill them? In the end, how to deal with them was also a problem. It was better to take this opportunity to release the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect and sell a favor to the primeval Lord of Heaven. In that case, Taibai Jingxing, do as you see fit. Yao Qi thought about it and felt that it made sense. However, she had said too much earlier. Now that she was asked to change her words, she was a little embarrassed. She could only let Taibai Jingxing do as he saw fit. Yes, Taibai Jingxing. Taibai Jingxing was a smart person. When he heard Yao Qi's words, he knew that she agreed. However, he couldn't lose face and was unwilling to say this. Therefore, he left this matter to him. With a plan in mind, Taibai Jingxing winked at the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals below, indicating that they should make way so that the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect could leave. In fact, after seeing Taoist Yu Qing appear, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals lost their fighting spirit and didn't dare to continue to attack. Now that they had received Taibai Jingxing's signal, it was exactly what they wanted. Therefore, soon, the group of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals wanted to retreat to both sides and make way. Seeing that their master had come, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect were full of confidence again. They no longer looked like they were in a sorry state. Instead, they swaggered through the passage and walked toward Taoist Yu Qing. Seeing this, although everyone's face was a little ugly, they didn't say anything. After a while, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect came in front of Taoist Yu Qing. After greeting him one by one, they silently retreated behind him. Taoist Yu Qing, since you have received your disciple, why don't you leave? Seeing that Taoist Yu Qing still hadn't left after she released his disciple, Yao Qi couldn't help but frown and ask. Poor Wei has received his disciple, but he hasn't received his disciple yet. So how can he leave? Shaking his head, Taoist Yu Qing said with an insatiable desire. Taoist Yu Qing, do you really think that poor Wei is afraid of you? It's not enough to release your disciple, and now you want to release your disciple? You've gone too far. This time, Yao Qi was really angry. There was still a reason to release the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, but if Yang Jian and his mother were released, the heavenly court's face would be completely lost. From now on, the heavenly court would become the laughingstock of the untainted land, and the object of ridicule of all living beings. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a great shame. So, how could Yao Qi agree to release them? She couldn't even fall out with him. With anger rising in her heart, Yao Qi flashed directly to the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian's mother and son, and restrained them. If you want to save them, you can, but first over the dead body of poor Wei. After suppressing the mother and son with a flip of her hand, Yao Qi looked back at Taoist Bodhi and Taoist Yu Qing and said with a resolute face, in a one-on-one fight, Yao Qi might not be a match for them, let alone 1 against 2. But Yao Qi really didn't believe that the two dared to kill her in order to save people. Not to mention her identity as the Heavenly Queen of Jade Lake. Her identity as the child of Tao ancestor Hongjun was enough to make Taoist Yu Qing not dare to kill her. In order to save your grand disciple, you killed your own master's Taoist child. And it was even under the circumstances that you were in the wrong. Do you really think that Tao ancestor Hongjun is so weak that he won't be angry? Alas! Fellow Taoist, why are you doing this? With a sigh, Taoist Yu Qing made a move. A jade-colored immortal light fell and turned into a white light, rolling toward Yang Jian and the fake Yaoji. At the same time, on the other side, Taoist Bodhi's body suddenly bloomed with hundreds of millions of fine lights, which hit Yao Qi overwhelmingly, forcing her to defend with all her strength. Damn it! Seeing that Taoist Yu Qing's immortal light was about to sweep away Yang Jian and his mother, a cold light flashed in Yao Qi's eyes, and she had the intention to kill. After that, she didn't do anything, but Yang Jian and his mother directly exploded into 2 clouds of blood mist, completely losing their lives. Yao Qi was a great medium in the great perfection of sage to be. If she wanted to kill 2 little Tai Jingxian cultivators, wasn't it just a matter of a thought? She could kill Yang Jian and his mother in an instant with just a thought, and not even their bones would be left. Fellow Taoist, don't make a futile struggle. You can't kill them in front of the poor Wei. After seeing Yang Jian and his mother being killed by Yao Qi, Taoist Yu Qing's expression didn't change at all, and he just said coldly. Then he waved his big sleeve, and a force that could turn everything upside down appeared, twisting yin and yang and reversing life and death, making Yang Jian and his mother appear in this world again. This was the reversal of yin and yang of the Big Dipper 36 superpowers. The Big Dipper 36 skills, after being performed by a saint, finally showed its invincible power. It reversed black and white, mixed up yin and yang, and crossed the boundary of life and death to resurrect Yang Jian and his mother, who were killed by Yao Qiyu. Kill! Yao Qi was shocked and angry. She pulled out the silver hairpin in her hair and waved it in the air, drawing a vast river of stars, which rushed toward Yang Jian and his mother. The silver hairpin was a protective spiritual treasure, given to Yao Qi by the Taoist ancestor. It was of the highest quality, and its power was shocking. Under normal circumstances, a gentle wave from Yao Qi could turn 1,000,000 Yang Jian into ashes in an instant, let alone a single Yang Jian. But now, under the protection of Taoist Yu Qing, Yao Qi's attack couldn't hurt Yang Jian and his mother at all. Taoist Yu Qing formed a seal with one hand and pointed at the jade pool. The vast river of stars immediately rolled back and rushed toward the jade pool at a faster and stronger speed. This was called Wind and Fire Return. It was one of the Big Dipper 36 superpowers, and it had the power to reverse the enemy's attack. Puff! Just as Yao Qi was thinking about killing Yang Jian and his mother, Bodhi Taoist's attack came and hit her. It broke her protective phoenix chi and sent her flying, crashing into the river of stars. After being hit twice in a row, Yao Qi spat out a mouthful of blood. She was seriously injured. Whoosh! Taking advantage of Yao Qi's injury, Taoist Yu Qing rolled up the jade pure celestial light to save Yang Jian and his mother. But at this moment, a horsetail whisk suddenly rushed out and took Yang Jian's mother away, leaving only Yang Jian, who was taken away by the jade pure celestial light. Taoist Yu Qing looked up and saw that it was Bodhi Taoist who took Yang Jian's mother away. What are you doing? Taoist Yu Qing narrowed his eyes and asked expressionlessly. Haha, you want to save your grand disciple, while the poor Wei wants to save her disciple. What's there to be confused about? Taoist Subhoodie laughed and asked, pretending that he didn't know anything. Yang Jian was a third-generation disciple of the Chan sect, But the fake Yaoji was also a disciple of the Western sect. It was completely reasonable for Bodhi Taoist to save her. However, Yang Jian's mother fell into the hands of the Western sect. This might not be a good thing for him. But now was not the time to discuss this. Because they were in trouble. Yao Qi came back to her senses. Seeing that Yang Jian and his mother had been rescued, she exploded. She drew the heavenly quartz qi into her body and brazenly attacked the two. For a moment, Yao Qi's aura skyrocketed and directly entered the origin realm. Kill. Seeing this, Yu Qing and Bodhi did not dare to hold back. They each used all their strength and drew the support of their own body's strength. Like Yao Qi, they entered the origin realm and faced her together. Boom. At this moment, Yao Qi faced Yu Qing and Bodhi head-on. The three origin realm forces collided fiercely, shaking the world and disturbing the universe. After a single blow, the outcome was decided. Yao Qi was no match for the combined power of the two. Not only was she sent flying, but even the heavenly quartz qi was blasted out and fell from the origin realm. With just one blow, Yao Qi had completely lost the ability to fight again. Let's go. After defeating Yao Qi, Taoist Yu Qing and Bodhi Taoist did not have the slightest bit of pride on their faces. Instead, they looked solemn. They grabbed the disciples beside them and were about to leave. However, they could not leave. Yao Qi's defeat caused the heavenly quartz qi to be in turmoil, which awakened the three great emperors who were closely related to it. The Jade Emperor, the Great Emperor of Ziwei, and the Great Emperor of the South Pole. Yuanshi Zhuanti, how dare you do this? As soon as he opened his eyes, Haotian saw Yao Qi, who was seriously injured and unconscious, as well as Taoist Yu Qing and Bodhi Taoist who were about to leave. Chapter 7:16. Killing Intent. Uncontrollable killing intent rose in Hao Yan's heart, and then he directly attacked. Roar, with a loud dragon roar, the heavenly quartz luck suddenly turned into a divine dragon and flew out from the top of Hao Yan's head. It meandered for tens of thousands of miles and roared as it pounced on Bodhi Taoist. At the same time, on the other side of the heaven realm, in the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen also ignored his injuries and forcefully activated the Galaxy Cosmic Light Array, brazenly attacking Taoist Yu Qing. Whoosh! The starlight was like rain, turning into a huge waterfall, cutting through the sky and sweeping toward Taoist Yu Qing and the 12 Golden Immortals. Without a doubt, Feng Zichen and Hao Yan's attacks belonged to the primordial chaos level, and it was the highest primordial chaos power. Because in anger they used the power of rank. If it were Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and Saint Zhuanti here, it would not be difficult for them to block this attack. Because they could mobilize the power of the heavenly way. This was a power that was not inferior to the power of rank at all, or even stronger. But the problem was that Taoist Yu Qing and Bodhi Taoist were not Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and Saint Zhuanti. They were only the good corpses of the two. It was already the limit for them to be able to exert the power of the primordial chaos level. It was completely impossible for them to mobilize the power of the heavenly way. Mobilizing the power of the heavenly way was the privilege of saints. Other than the saints themselves, even their incarnations could not do this. What if they could not block the attacks of Feng Zichen and Hao Yan? It was simple, they could only die. Rumble. The divine dragon roared and swallowed Bodhi Taoist and the fake Yaoji in his hand. The starlight was vast and swept everything, drowning Taoist Yu Qing, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, and Yang Jian. Sacrifice. At the moment of life and death, Taoist Yu Qing and Bodhi Taoist actually made the same choice. The two of them sacrificed themselves without hesitation in exchange for a huge power to protect their disciples. From the moment Feng Zichen and Hao Tian woke up, Taoist Yu Qing and Taoist Bodhi knew that the two of them were doomed to die. Since they were going to die anyway, they naturally had to choose a more valuable death. For example, using their own fall in exchange for a chance of survival for their disciples. They could die, but their disciples could not. Otherwise, wouldn't their trip be in vain? Rumble. The two sacred arts exploded at the same time. The terrifying power spread out, and the heaven and earth stopped moving at this moment. After everything calmed down, Taoist Yu Qing and Taoist Bodhi were no longer in the world. Their disciples, on the other hand, were unscathed because they risked their lives to protect them. How could this be? Master, even though the truth had already happened in front of their eyes, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect still could not believe that their master had fallen in front of them. He believed that this experience would leave an indelible mark on them, and they would learn to respect him. Reverence for the strong. The 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect should restrain themselves. They were quite unscrupulous and did not know what reverence was. That was a disaster. In the untainted land, the name of a saint was not omnipotent. Many existences would not give face to a saint. But strength could. As long as one was strong enough, one could be omnipotent. Just as the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect and the fake Yaoji were stunned, 2 big hands suddenly reached out from the direction of Kunlun Mountain and the west, grabbed them and left. It was the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Juanti, who took action to save their disciples. They had paid such a high price, and their good corpses were destroyed for this. If they could not save their disciples, they would suffer a great loss. You're courting death. Seeing this, Feng Zichen and Haotian were even more furious. They stood up directly, and the monstrous aura spread out. The whole untainted land shook because of it, and a terrifying vision appeared as if it was the end of the world. Kill. The 2 of them shouted in unison. The whole heavenly court, and even the whole 33 heavens, and the boundless starry sky shook together. Then, a supreme force spread out and condensed on Feng Zichen and Haotian. It gradually condensed into one, and then chased after the 2 giant hands. Rumble. The 2 forces tore through the layers of space and chased after the giant hand. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Juanti were very fast. They almost did not give Feng Zichen and Haotian time to react before they saved their disciples. However, although they were fast, Feng Zichen and Haotian were not slow either. Their palms had just returned to Kunlun Mountain and Meru Mountain when the 2 supreme forces arrived. Then, without hesitation, they smashed down fiercely. How dare you? How dare you? This time, it was the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Juanti's turn to be angry. This was their dojo. If it was hit by this magical power of the 2, what would be left? It would probably shatter directly. In their anger, the 2 of them attacked almost without holding back. On Kunlun Mountain, the Trigem Jade Rui rose into the air and evolved the Tao of heaven, earth, and man. It separated the 3 lights, separated water, fire, and wind, and developed essence, chi, and spirit. It brazenly faced the terrifying wave from the heavenly court. On the newly rebuilt Meru Mountain, the Tree of 7 Wonders spanned between heaven and earth. It developed the mystery of yin and yang and the 5 elements. It bloomed with light and covered the entire Meru Mountain, protecting it firmly. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, a terrifying wave of energy blasted towards Mount Kunlun and Mount Meru. Bang! After the fierce confrontation, although Kunlun Mountain and Meru Mountain were fine, the magic treasures protecting them were severely damaged. Crack! Crack! There was a shattering sound, and shocking cracks appeared on the Tree of 7 Wonders and the Trigem Jade Rui at the same time. Then a shocking scene happened. The 2 magic treasures, which could be called the Tao-proving treasures of the saints, were shattered one after another, turning into fragments that scattered into the untainted land and disappeared. It was the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Juanti's fault for underestimating their enemy. Although the Tree of 7 Wonders and the Trigem Jade Rui were strong, they were only supreme-grade primordial spirit treasures, and not primordial cardinal treasures. How could they resist the power of Feng Zichen and Haotian? It should be known that that attack was launched by the power of the entire heaven realm and the boundless starry sky. Its power was no weaker than the full-strength attack of a 12th heaven of Hunyuan expert. Even Tao ancestor Hong Jun did not dare to take such a powerful attack lightly. How could the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Juanti easily block it? The destruction of the magic treasures was light. It was thanks to their quick reaction that they did not destroy Meru Mountain and Kunlun Mountain together. They knew to use primordial cardinal treasures to block it, or ask another saint for help. Hiss! This scene sent chills down the spines of those powerful beings who were watching the show, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Was the world going to change? This should be the first time that the two saints had suffered such a big loss. Although they saved their own disciples, the loss was too great. Not only was the good corpse destroyed, but even the Tao-proving treasures were destroyed. It was really a heavy loss. Puff! The Tao-proving treasures were destroyed. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti immediately suffered a backlash and spat out a large mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. At the same time, Feng Zichen and Haotian in the Heaven Realm were not feeling well either. Forcibly activating the power of the Heaven Realm and the boundless starry sky was undoubtedly a huge burden for them, who were already seriously injured. It made their injuries even more serious. However, compared with the results they achieved, the price they paid was undoubtedly worth it. The Tao-proving treasures were destroyed, the good corpse was destroyed, and they were seriously injured. This time, the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti could be said to have lost face in front of everyone. As for the Heavenly Court, they had also used this battle to recover some of their lost dignity. You're courting death. After suffering such a huge loss, how could the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti let it go? Immediately, the two of them used their full strength. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin took out the Panga banner, while Saint Xuanti revealed his true body. He wanted to charge towards the Heavenly Court to save some face. However, at this moment, the Heavenly Tao made its move. In the blink of an eye, an incomparably grand and noble aura descended. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the entire Kunlun Mountain and Mount Meru. Then, the Panga banner trembled for a moment before slowly retreating. The huge connate Bodhi tree that stood on Mount Meru also slowly transformed into a human form. To the Heavenly Tao, it was time for this farce to end. If this continued, it would not be the face of the Heavenly Emperor and the saints, but the Heavenly Tao. They are all figures who have achieved the Tao, but they are like children in the human world. How can they make such a huge joke in front of everyone? How can they do this? Tao Ancestor Hongjun's ethereal voice suddenly sounded in the world, causing everyone's expressions to change drastically. Master Teacher, I know my mistake. Hearing that, the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti hurriedly admitted their mistakes. On the other side, Haotian did the same. As for Feng Zichen, he was the younger brother of the Heavenly Tao. His status was extremely noble. If he gave Tao Ancestor Hongjun face, it would be fine to call him Tao Ancestor. However, if he did not give Tao Ancestor Hongjun face, he would not even be called Tao Ancestor. Seeing Tao Ancestor Hongjun appear, Feng Zichen snorted coldly without giving him face. He turned around and returned to the boundless starry sky to continue healing. It was unknown whether Tao Ancestor Hongjun ignored him, or had left long ago. In short, after reprimanding them, there was no sound. Although the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti were still very dissatisfied with Haotian and Feng Zichen. However, after being reprimanded by Tao Ancestor Hongjun, they had no choice but to suppress their dissatisfaction and temporarily put this matter behind them. After all, they could not afford to offend Tao Ancestor Hongjun. The more powerful an existence was, the more they could understand how terrifying Tao Ancestor Hongjun was. It could be described as unimaginable. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti had finally let go of this matter. After all, they were the ones who were in the wrong in this matter. If the matter was blown up and Tao Ancestor Hongjun was involved, their faces would not look good. However, they had let it go, but there was someone who could not. That was Haotian. The matter of robbing the execution ground had already made him feel extremely aggrieved. In addition, Yaoqi was seriously injured by the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti. This undoubtedly made Haotian even angrier. When Haotian opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Yaoqi lying on the ground with serious injuries and falling in front of him. How could he not have been in a bad mood? In short, at that moment, Haotian went crazy. Ignoring his injuries, he forcefully activated the origin power of the Heaven Realm to kill the two of them. Feng Zichen felt the madness in Haotian's heart, so he went crazy with him. He also ignored his injuries and activated the boundless starry sky power. Haotian was angry, especially when he looked at the seriously injured Yao Qi in front of him. The anger in his heart directly rose to the level of hatred. For this reason, after seeing that Tao ancestor Hongjun only reprimanded the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti, and did not give any actual punishment, the more Haoyan thought about it, the angrier he became. As the saying goes, the most terrifying thing is to force an honest person into a corner. This time, Haoyan was really forced into a corner, and perfectly demonstrated this point. After that, Haoyan ignored his injuries and carried Yao Qi, who was also seriously injured, directly broke through the void, walked into the chaos outside the sky, and went to the Purple Cloud Palace. The apotheosis tribulation begins from here. Looking at Haoyan and Yao Qi, who were heading to the Purple Cloud Palace, Feng Zichen could not help but sigh. Of course, he knew the purpose of Haoyan's visit. Obviously, he was going to complain and complain. However, with Haoyan's visit, the apotheosis tribulation was about to begin. As for him, it was time for him to make preparations. The chaos outside the sky was boundless and unimaginably vast. It was deeper and more vast than the boundless starry sky. After Haoyan and Yao Qi arrived here, they directly returned to the form of Taoist children. Following the feeling in their hearts, they wandered around the vast chaos, hoping to find the location of the Purple Cloud Palace. As the Taoist field of the Tao ancestor, the Purple Cloud Palace was a very magical place. It did not exist in the past, the future, or the present. It was like a shadow, wandering outside of time and space, not existing in any place in the world. Unless your strength was close to, or even comparable to or surpassing Tao ancestor Hongjun. Otherwise, without his permission, no matter how you searched the entire chaos outside the sky, you would not be able to find any trace of the Purple Cloud Palace. After all, they were his children. Tao ancestor Hongjun still remembered their old friendship, and opened the door of convenience for Haoyan and Yao Qi. Not long after Haoyan and Yao Qi walked in the chaos outside the sky, the Purple Cloud Palace appeared in front of them. Seeing this, Haoyan was overjoyed and walked over. "Teacher, please uphold justice for me?" As soon as he entered the hall, Haoyan bowed and said. As he spoke, he did not forget to place Yao Qi, who was seriously injured and unconscious, in front of Tao ancestor Hongjun. Sigh. Looking at Yao Qi in front of him, Tao ancestor Hongjun could not help but sigh heavily. There was obvious displeasure on his face. P.S. Brothers who are reading pirated copies, or brothers who are reading books on other websites, please support them. The average subscription has begun to drop. Chapter 717. It was normal for Tao ancestor Hongjun to be unhappy. Were the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and Saint Xuanti fighting the Jade Pool? No, they were slapping Tao ancestor Hongjun's face. No matter what, the person who asked Haoyan and the Jade Pool to be the Heavenly Emperor and Heavenly Empress was Tao ancestor Hongjun. In other words, the Jade Pool and Haoyan were Tao ancestor Hongjun's people. The saints were bullying the two of them. It was obvious that they did not take Tao ancestor Hongjun seriously. As long as they had a trace of Tao ancestor Hongjun in their eyes, they would not be so ruthless to the Jade Pool. Thinking of this, how could Tao ancestor Hongjun be happy? The saints wanted face, but could it be that Tao ancestor Hongjun did not want face? With this thought in mind, Tao ancestor Hongjun's expression could not help but turn uglier. Suppressing the unhappiness in his heart, Tao ancestor Hongjun looked at Haoyan in front of him and said, "I've wronged you all these years." As he spoke, he waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and swept out a breeze towards Haoyan and the Jade Pool below. As the breeze blew past, Haoyan felt a rich power of creation rise from his body. In the blink of an eye, his injuries were healed. Haoyan did not have time to be happy. He hurriedly looked at the Jade Pool in front of him. Seeing that his face was gradually recovering and his aura was gradually calming down, Haoyan was relieved and said respectfully to the Tao ancestor, "Thank you for your help, teacher." After saying that, Haoyan bowed to Tao ancestor Hongjun. However, he did not bow down. Halfway through, he was stopped by Tao ancestor Hongjun. "Enough, you're already the Heavenly Emperor. How can you be like before?" A dignified supreme of heaven and earth bowed to an old man like the poor Wei. If word got out, what would it look like? Don't do this in the future. Dao ancestor Hongjun pretended to be angry as he held up Haotian with his horsetail whisk. Yes, teacher. Haotian will remember. Seeing Dao ancestor Hongjun like this, Haotian did not insist and bowed slightly. Only then did Dao ancestor Hongjun's expression relax. Poor Wei already knows why you're here. All these years, those senior brothers of yours have indeed gone too far. Even poor Wei is unable to tolerate it. It's just that if you don't look for poor Wei won't stand up for you, lest others say she's biased. However, since you're here today, the poor Wei has a reason to make a decision for you. After Haotian calmed down, Dao ancestor Hongjun said slowly. However, what he said made Haotian blush. It turned out that it was not that Dao ancestor Hongjun was unwilling to help Haotian, but that Haotian did not take the initiative to speak. If Haotian did not speak, how would Dao ancestor Hongjun know that he had been wronged? Dao ancestor Hongjun might think that Haotian did not retaliate because he was holding back something bad and numbing the other party. He was prepared to ruthlessly backstab the other party at the crucial moment. If that was the case, wouldn't Dao ancestor Hongjun ruin Haotian's matter, if he interfered rashly? It was precisely because of this that even though he knew that Haotian had been wronged, Dao ancestor Hongjun did not help. If you didn't say anything after being wronged, who would be wronged if not you? Could it be that you still expect the other party to pity you? Ridiculous. People like you are bullied. Haotian was really unable to raise his head because of Dao ancestor Hongjun's words. All these years, it was precisely because of his weakness that the saint had bullied him even more. If he had acted a little tougher or directly ran to the Purple Cloud Palace to complain, the saint would definitely not have dared to look down on him. I'm sorry, teacher. Haotian knows his mistake. It was only at this moment that Haotian finally understood that he was different from Dijun. He was someone with a backer. Even if he directly fell out with the saint could not do anything to him. That was because he was Dao ancestor Hongjun's person. Bullying him was equivalent to slapping Dao ancestor Hongjun's face. This was also the reason why Dao ancestor Hongjun supported Haotian as the heavenly emperor back then. He was standing up for Haotian and clearly telling the saints that Haotian was his person. Unfortunately, he did not know what was going on with Haotian. After so many years, he still could not figure out Dao ancestor Hongjun's meaning. He had been bullied for so many years for nothing. Therefore, in a sense, most of the grievances that Haotian had suffered over the years were his own fault. Have you really thought it through? If you have, take Yaoqi to the side and wait. Let's see how poor Wei will get an explanation for you. Dao ancestor Hongjun glared at Haotian angrily and said. Seeing this, Haotian smiled embarrassedly and pulled Yaoqi, who had just woken up with a confused expression, to the side. Come to the Purple Cloud Palace quickly. With a thought from Dao ancestor Hongjun, his dignified voice immediately sounded in the ears of the 6 saints. Hearing this, the 6 saints were shocked at first. Then they did not dare to delay and hurriedly ran to the Purple Cloud Palace. However, other than the 6 saints, there was another person who was called to the Purple Cloud Palace by Dao ancestor Hongjun. That was Feng Zichen. It was not surprising that the 6 saints were called to the Purple Cloud Palace. After all, this matter was related to them. But the strange thing was, why did the Dao ancestor call Feng Zichen? In this regard, Feng Zichen was also very puzzled. How could the matter of the apotheosis have anything to do with him? Although there were 365 deity positions on the apotheosis list, the same number as Zhouxing. But these deity positions really had nothing to do with Zhouxing. The power of the deity positions of the heavenly cycle was the embodiment of the power of the heavenly gods. It could either rely on heaven and earth, or rely on rules, or even rely on the power of incense and wish. But it definitely did not come from Zhouxing, because if not for Feng Zichen, Zhouxing would have been destroyed in the final battle between the liches and demons. In his previous life he did not even Zhouxing. How could the righteous gods of the heavenly court borrow the power of Zhouxing? Wasn't this happy? Therefore, the position of the righteous gods of the heavenly court had nothing to do with Zhouxing. If that was the case, then the purpose of Tao ancestor Hongjun inviting him to the Purple Cloud Palace was somewhat intriguing. However, no matter what Tao ancestor Hongjun's purpose was, Feng Zichen had to go. He could not guess anything here, but when he reached the Purple Cloud Palace, he would naturally understand. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen directly soared into the sky and entered the chaos beyond the heavens after the 6 saints. As soon as he entered the Purple Cloud Palace, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning saw Hao Tian sitting at the side. In an instant he understood why Tao ancestor Hongjun had called them over. This fellow must have come to complain. Thinking of this, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning felt a surge of anger rising in his heart. However, he also knew that this was the Purple Cloud Palace, not a place for him to behave atrociously. Therefore, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning suppressed his anger and found his seat to sit down. He turned his head and did not look at Hao Tian. At the same time, he was also thinking about how to repay Hao Tian when he went out. On the other side, Saint Xuanti, who had the same thoughts as the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, also sat in his seat expressionlessly. He was silently thinking about how to deal with Hao Tian. Not long after the 6 saints took their seats, Feng Zichen also hurried over. After glancing around the hall, he found a seat beside Yu Haoyan and sat down. When everyone had arrived, Tao ancestor Hongjun appeared and sat at the head of the table. Today, there are disciples of the celestial sect of wonders who do not cultivate virtue and are lawless. They despise the power of heaven and earth and do not follow the rules of heaven and earth. As a result, they attract tribulation and perform the killing tribulation of heaven and earth. As soon as he appeared, Tao ancestor Hongjun said so. After he finished speaking, everyone felt a change in the way of heaven. Then the way of heaven began to become blurry and chaotic. They could no longer see clearly. However, just before the way of heaven completely became chaotic, everyone had already understood the origin of this killing tribulation from the revelation of the way of heaven. This killing tribulation was called the immortal God-killing tribulation. It was caused by some immortals who did not respect the celestial emperor. What was the celestial emperor? He was the ruler of all living beings in the world. At the same time, he was also the incarnation of the way of heaven. Not respecting the celestial emperor was not respecting heaven and earth, and the way of heaven. Looking down on the celestial emperor, and even slapping his face was slapping the face of heaven and earth and the way of heaven. In the primordial world, saints could not be called by their names, and heaven and earth could not be humiliated. If one violated it, they would definitely suffer a calamity. The disciples of Chan school had committed all of these, so they naturally attracted a killing tribulation for themselves. Of course, that was all. This killing tribulation would not turn into a killing tribulation for all immortals and gods. After all, the mistakes made by the disciples of Chan school were only so big. It was already the limit to attract a killing tribulation for themselves. It was not only implicating all the immortals and gods. The main reason for this killing tribulation was the backlash from the Khanate myriad Tao. In order to seize the initiative of the postnatal era, the 3 pure ones had done something to change the world. They had directly crippled the Khanate myriad Tao and replaced it with the heavenly myriad Tao. Although they had succeeded, they had also offended the Khanate myriad Tao. How could there be no price to change the world? The backlash of the Khanate myriad Tao could not do anything to the 3 pure ones, but could it not do anything to the heavenly immortal Tao? Therefore, the backlash from the Khanate myriad Tao fell on the heavenly immortal Tao. Although this backlash was strong, with the strengthening of the post-celestial myriad Tao, there would be a day when it would be completely destroyed. However, there was a prerequisite for all of this, and that was under the circumstances that nothing unexpected happened. However, at this moment, the disciples of Chan school had angered the way of heaven because they looked down on the celestial emperor and attracted a killing tribulation for themselves. It was this killing tribulation that he was like a catalyst that directly detonated the backlash of the Khanate myriad Tao, thus evolving into a tribulation that targeted the entire heavenly immortal Tao. This was the Khanate myriad Tao's counterattack against the postnatal myriad Tao. Therefore, in this killing tribulation, all cultivators who cultivated the postnatal Tao no matter which force they came from, had to transcend the tribulation. If they passed it, they would be carefree. If they could not, they would die. After understanding the reason, the three pure ones' faces darkened. They did not expect that after creating the heavenly immortal Tao, there would be so many troublesome things waiting for them to solve. However, even so, the three pure ones did not regret it at all. There was no other reason. It was because compared to the trouble it brought, the benefits brought by the heavenly immortal Tao were greater. Unlike the three pure ones, the other saints were much more indifferent after understanding the reason for this tribulation. Niwa was still expressionless, as if it had nothing to do with her. Obviously, at this moment, she did not know that this killing tribulation was started by her. If she really knew, she probably would not be able to remain indifferent. Xuanti and Jieyin frowned, as if they were worried that this tribulation would affect the West. After all, the West was also part of those who looked down on the heavenly court. As for Feng Zichen, the word gloating was written on his face. His expression was abnormally bad. If this was not the Purple Cloud Palace, the three pure ones would have beaten him up long ago. Since you already know the reason for this tribulation, the poor Wei will not explain further. I called you here today not for this matter, but for another matter. As he spoke, a list appeared in Tao Ancestor Hongjun's hand, and placed it in front of everyone. Master, what is this? Sensing the powerful fluctuations on the list, the Grand Pure One could not help but ask. This treasure is the Heavenly Book, also known as the God Roll. I called you here today because of this treasure. When the immortal God-killing tribulation erupts, there will definitely be countless immortals and gods who will die because of it. However, the heavens have the virtue of cherishing life, so they left a chance of survival for those living beings in the tribulation. And this chance of survival is on the God Roll. If you leave your name on the list, you can use this treasure to entrust your true spirit to it. If those who are not on the list die in the tribulation, they will turn into ashes. Billions of years of cultivation will turn into flowing water. Pointing at the God Roll, Tao Ancestor Hongjun explained its function. However, after hearing the function of the God Roll, not only was everyone not happy, but they also frowned. In this world, there was no such thing as a free lunch. Since the God Roll's function was so heaven-defying that it could protect one's true spirit, it was impossible to use it without a price. One had to know that in this world, one had to cultivate to the realm of the Daoyuo Taoist priests if they wanted their true spirit to be indestructible. And this investiture of the gods could actually allow one's true spirit to remain intact, just like the great Luo holy man. Just this point alone was heaven-defying enough. However, that was why the three pure ones were worried. The more heaven-defying something was, the greater the price one had to pay after using it. Those who leave their names on the list will be controlled by the owner of the list. Their life and death will be in the hands of the owner of the list. After a moment of silence, Tao Ancestor Hongjun slowly explained the price of leaving his name on the list. Hearing that, everyone thought to themselves that they were right. Only with freedom as the price would it be in line with the gift of the God Roll. That was an equivalent exchange. You entrusted your life and death to me, and I gave you the ability to be indestructible. To be honest, leaving one's name on the God Roll was indeed a rare good thing for some cultivators of the heavenly immortal Tao. That was because most cultivators of the heavenly immortal Tao would not be able to cultivate to the realm of immortality, even if they spent their entire lives. However, as long as they left their names on the God Roll, although they would lose their freedom, they would be able to achieve immortality from then on. From this point of view, they still profited. However, to the saints, this was something they could not tolerate. That was because how could they be willing to see the disciples that they had painstakingly nurtured be enslaved by them? Therefore, they would not sign this God Roll. P.S. I want a monthly ticket, I want a premium product. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.